Good evening and welcome to round 4 of the Australasian Sim Racing Super 2 Championship from Barbagallo Raceway. I'm once again Lewis Wedding, and of course joining me in the commentary box for this one, Benjamin Rody Rhodes. How's it going, mate?
Good, Lewis. Good to be back again for the fourth round of Super 2 this year, and we're at Barbagallo this round.
Yeah, going to be an interesting one. Times are very, very tight out there in the practice sessions, and well, it always throws up very close racing. We did see, I think last season, in the Summer Series and last season, we did see some really close racing, some new podium getters, and some new winners. May see that tonight, but we do also have a number of the front runners in the championship towards the top end of the standings in practice and the overall practice server that's been up throughout the week. Um, Rody, what are you looking out for tonight at this little bull ring of a circuit?
I'm interested to see what the field spread's going to turn out to be, and part of that's going to come into, as always, where the tire strategy lies. For I think 3 or 4 rounds, for the first 3 rounds so far, we've questioned the viability of softs, and the field have proven to us that softs work. We're questioning it really hard tonight with whether the softs will do a full 21 laps, and they probably won't. So we're probably going to see people stopping, or maybe even a wholesale push to the hards. I'm just curious to see where some of that falls out. And with the length of a pit, of people pit stopping, it's going to drop them out interesting orders. It's just some of that real short track fun where you don't kind of where the you kind of end up with just a cluster of cars. Um, you've got plenty of room to race at this track as well, and there has been some monumental battles here you mentioned earlier. I can recall races where cars have been too wide for an entire lap in process of a battle, and you kind of have to be here because it can take you that long to effect a pass. So it's a different measure of racing that some of the guys in Super 2 probably haven't covered before. The concept of not only passing someone, but setting up a pass sort of, in essence, a lap early and then working on that pass for an entire lap to then get it done. Because you kind of have to with some of the with some of the racing here. So I'm interested to see whether anyone is able to pull that off. And the other interesting point to pull up, at least for this first race, is the cars who will be starting off the back of the grid.
Yeah, got a number of runners that will be starting not only from the back of the grid, but from the pit lane as well. So, what was picked up in the broadcast last time out at Queensland Raceway, where, well, I was having a bit of a laugh to myself and in amazement that we had so many cars just leaving the pits and crossing the solid line on the pit exit. It's a big no-no in real life, and it's also a big no-no here in the virtual world. So I'm just going to try and flick over to the stewards report to actually find out who all those drivers are. It's not just one or two. It's actually a handful of them, Rody. So quite a number of drivers starting from the pit lane and just having it on my screen now. So I've got Daniel Cox, Matt Cecil, Nathan Higginson, Freakish, Steve Warwick, Brian Walsh, who's not here this evening. He's unwell at the moment after his COVID jab, and Pierre Roy, who's probably at work, I'd imagine, or on his way to work. Not here at the moment, but he'll have to serve that at a later date. So, of the drivers that are here, that's a good 5 drivers starting from the pits.
Yeah, and it's going to be, as I've talked to some drivers during the week, this is probably one of the better tracks to start from the pits in because it is such a short lap. Um, and the length of the race, I don't think it'll be too bad in effect, but there already are guys clamoring to be the first out of pit lane, even though realistically the difference there is maybe half a second, if that, to the car behind you once you're all getting going. Not even that. But yeah, there's already guys that are clamoring to find some sort of way, guys that are convinced trying to make the argument that maybe the car at the head of the pit lane should be, or the car at the first car of that bunch in practice should be the one to leave the pit lane first. But I think it'll just end up in the order of who gets to the end of pit lane first, and we'll end up seeing a mini race, I suppose, once the race session kicks off, of those guys trying to very formally and very properly, but also in a bit of a rush and a bit of a panic, trying to get to the first front of pit lane. Although, to be honest, I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference.
Well, I did have that question asked to me, obviously in one of the admins of the series, and I just said, well, first in, best dressed. Whoever's the first out of the pits, or not the end, well, to the end of the pits, not to or out of the pits. so to speak, because if you do leave when it is red, you are DQ'd, and you can't fix that. That's your race done. So hopefully you won't see any of the drivers do that. But yeah, we'll be first in or first out of the garage. And if your garage is closer to the exit of the pits, you're probably in a good standing there. But at the same time, Rody, they're going to be sitting there for a little while the formation lap takes place. So, yeah, they will be waiting there for a little while. And as you said, may not make too much of a difference. Also, with the way the format is, it's not the end of the world starting from the back for these guys because, um, they'll start the next race if they can get themselves into the top 10. They'll start themselves, towards the front end of the field for race number 2.
Yeah. We saw a case in point, and actually, I think we've just moved to qualifying, but I'm seeing some stuff that's just we might not be going to qualifying straight away. Part of the and there's a good example of this was last round with Braxton Stancliffe, who had a rear of grid start, I believe, from a previous race incident. He started off the back of the grid in the first race, made it up to I think it was 12th before he had an issue on the last lap, pushing into the back again. The second race, he had to basically recover all over again and came back to I think it was 12th again. Third race, he had a brilliant start and ended up being in the. I can't remember if I'm drawing a blank as to if he won, but he was in that top 3 battle right at the end. And that was just down to his car pace. He had brilliant car pace Queensland Raceway. He managed to just cycle through the field. So it's less about where you start; it's more about how your races, which is what determine where you finish with this format. So as it does, if you start off the back, that's not the end of the world. As long as you can make progress and maybe look bigger picture, set your goals on where you want to be for the third race rather than where you want to be for the first race. Points are weighed the same across all 3, but if you're chasing an ultimate goal, you're more likely to achieve it in the second or third race than achieve it in the first. So Coxy, I suppose, is an example, and Higo loves to throw a bit of ambition to his driving as well. If they're aiming for big results tonight, they need to look big picture. They need to look for race 2 or race 3 to be the one where they start to shine, because they can do well in race 1, but if they really overdrive themselves in race 1 and put themselves essentially where they started, they're going to do that work all over again, and it basically erases all the work and all the effort they put into their first race tonight.
Well, perhaps with the way the tyres are, it may lend themselves to take a little bit of a risk if other people are unsure on the soft tyre. Maybe if half the field or most of the field are on hard tyres, maybe they gamble and put the soft tyre on because in the limited laps that I did about an hour and a half ago, I mean I was able to go almost half distance or sorry, I got about quarter of a distance through, and my tyres, or more than a quarter of a distance, what would have been through a race distance, and the tyres would have made it to the end, and they still would have had 10-15% left on them. So perhaps the extreme steering lock, which is one of the few things you can change in the lock setup part, as well as the brake power. Perhaps the steering lock just a little bit too. They're running it a little bit too extreme for some guys, but at the same time, drivers perhaps driving a little bit too hard and they have to start on the hard tyre. But if those guys could take a gamble, make the softs work, they might put themselves in good stead. Or if we do see drivers just driving too hard in front of them that do gamble on the softs and do pit, they could find themselves in front of them as well, Rody. So very, very interesting. The first race, I think, is going to set the tone for what people are going to do strategy-wise. But certainly there is a scope for those guys starting from the pit lane just to almost take a bit of a punt and, because they've got really nothing to lose, starting probably about 19 to 20 seconds away from the field. That's about how long generally the first sector is, so it's not too bad, but is going to put them well out of touch. So they are in that zone where you can take a gamble. Still waiting here. Number of drivers leaving the server. Looks like we're going to tick over in about 40 seconds to qualifying. But I guess we do have a little bit of time. If I can just find a decent camera here. Might as well bring up the championship standings. So hopefully they're correct on my screen. And there we go. Darren Kemp leads the championship by 30 points over Coxy. Of course, this has been adjusted. Now, there were a number of points penalties for drivers exceeding the white line, the solid white line on the exit of the pit lane in qualifying, and there's also some in the race as well where they were cutting from the outside of the track on the run to turn 1 over into the pit lane. We gave them half a car, and we sat there for a couple of hours, myself and Rossi and Heather, and went over and, well, we had to ping a few drivers. So Dane, from his race 1 victory, lost 40 points because he crossed it 8 times. And this is, bear in mind, we gave each driver 3 chances. So you could, on your 4th one, you started getting points penalties, but you got 3 chances before that. So Dane, 40 points for him. Cheese got 15. Peter Thrower also dropped 10 points, and Aiden also dropped 15. That was just race number 1. And there was a further loss of 15 points for Dane in race 2. Ben Hall lost 35, and Cheese also lost 15, as well as Aiden. There were a couple of others, but they were only minor points. And then again in race 3, Dane lost another 5 points. So he's lost a lot of points already here, Rhodey. And Lockie Burke found himself dropping 30 points in the race 3. And Ben Hall did it on every single lap outside of the first lap, which we let the drivers get away with. And found himself disqualified. So drivers seeing a bit of tarmac, but not following the rules.
Yeah, I don't think Ben's particularly proud of that one in hindsight, and I suppose he holds a record there. That was near 100%. That was the records of the laps we were counting. That was a 100% record, and yeah, it's not one you'd want even if you were trying for it. But look, I think they've learned, and the good thing is there's not too many other tracks that are going to have those sort of issues. The issue we might run into tonight is we mention it later, is coming out of the last corner. You can use a lot of the runoff. I heard a crash somewhere, so people getting excited for.
Yeah, obviously drivers just waiting at the end of the pit lane, and someone I think just drove into the back of somebody else there. Turmo the head of the queue, and whoever's third in the queue there, just giving himself a little bit of space there between themselves and Turmo there. So some drivers following a bit of advice in just trying to leave themselves a bit of gap and not leaving the pit straight away. And our 5 drivers, they've got qualifying bans and starting from the pit lane. So around this circuit generally is pretty difficult here, Rhodey, with regards to traffic, but should be a lot easier for them out there tonight.
It'll help a little. We're down. I think we got 20 odd drivers running tonight, so we're just down from having 20 odd on track to 15 on track. It is a little less, but you've still got to manage it in yourself and try and get your own area of tarmac to work with. It is one of the shorter tracks. I don't remember the distance off my head, but you have got a couple of meters at least, and mathematically that it is your own on track. They don't all have to run in bunches, but you probably find they will. Some drivers need the carrot of having a car follow them. The other way around, so they need the carrot following a car. Some drivers might want to get some menial benefit out of slipstream. But yeah, I think like in terms of that thinking, the way the best one on that so far was Braxton Stankley, who was the 3rd car in line, because he let the other cars go for a good 10 seconds before he started to come out for his section. And he's already had, I think, issues with traffic in practice tonight, so he's keen to avoid it for as much as he can in qualifying. But he won't be the first one on a lap. I think the first one on a lap is Dan Licciardo.
Yes, Dan, we are following on board here. An ideal run through the final corner. In fact, Turmo's been fairly handy on this lap. 2 purples for him, and he'll probably go purple again in the final sector as well. 55-0 for Dane, immediately beaten by Turmo by half a second there. And that would say to me that I reckon Turmo, he's got some soft tyres on there, Rhodey.
I'd say possibly, yeah. Braxton dropping in there with a 56.0. That's a good second, nearly a second and a half of back of Turmo. So a good argument test, maybe he's looking at the hards. Actually, looking at those times, Turmo's possibly just where that gap already. He might be the only one out there on the socks.
We do have a number of drivers out there in a bit of traffic at the moment. That was Cheese that's stuck behind Taipan at the moment, and he'd certainly like a bit of clear air. Might need to just back out of it and try and find some clear air. Got McLean not too far away. He's doing okay at the moment. He's got Hans out there late in division in this one. He's a P9 at the moment, but he's also behind a bunch of cars as well. Got Peter Throw up in 3rd. He did a heap of laps this week. Kempy as well, about half a second away. So we've got Hans coming down the hill to the final corner. Up to 10 as someone locks up in front of him. He managed here, not too many improving. So across the line, Hans does and moves in front of Noah Taro. Another late inclusion in this one, but Hans did lose a little bit of time in the final sector there compared to his own personal best. Now we've got Noah Tara on the fill-in this week. Good to see him back out there in a supercar. He's rounding the final corner. He's just up on his time. And he will cross the line. And he does improve by a considerable margin there. So 55.5, fairly solid time. Moves him up to P5. But already, Rhodey, I'd say Dane, depending on how he goes, he's backed out of that there. I reckon he may be on the hard tyre. Peter Thrower out there, he's done a heap of laps. He may be on the hard tyre as well, being half a second away. I wouldn't expect that with the amount of time and effort they've put in. And he's also done a 54.7 out there in overall practice. He's up again.
Yeah, Thermo is a quick driver. He runs main game. All of the top three have run main game this season. But Dane puts in a lot of practice for these Super 2 rounds. I expect him to be close to Termo's pace. So I'd say there's a good chance that gap is tie based. And Termo, he was one of the front runners at Phillip Island on pioneering the softs. I wouldn't be surprised if he feels like he's got it. The other person you mentioned earlier, of guys to roll the dice on strategy. I wouldn't be surprised if Hans was trying to pioneer the softs as well, because he was the front runner on softs at Phillip Island in the second and third race. He just managed to clear out a good probably 4 or 5 seconds, at least something like near on a second a lap over the next 3 cars. Pardon me. So, and he's not running. He doesn't have championship concerns here. He was trying to run the full season at the start of this, but work has gotten in the way, and this is only the second or third round he's made it out so far this season. So, I expect him to have a go at the softs as well. Just looking at some of the times, Cheese has jumped up into second. He is just over 2/10 up on Thrower on what's at the moment. Braxton Sandcliffe up to 5th, Hans up to 6th, which drops Noah Tara back to 7th. And newcomer John Slow now in the top 10.
Yeah, just sneaking in there in 9th place, 1.2 seconds off the pace. It'll be interesting to see what... well, generally we see, Rudy, what tyres drivers are on at the start of the race, where we see a number of those guys on the soft tyres actually just launch significantly better than the guys on the hard tyres. We will see them for sure, as well as probably after the first half a lap or so, when we see guys like back on pavements and people going away. But Licciardo here had clear air for most of this lap, and so he's going into the disconnect there. Yep, looks like some issues there for him, but he wasn't improving. Back to Peter Thrower, he's up a 10.5 on his own time here. Coming into the bowl, can he get the nose in? A little bit of a lock-up, but sweeps the nose in nicely. Got a car off there, the Team 18 car off in the gravel trap there. But continues on, found a little bit more time on his own time here, Thrower, and he's looking the goods here to keep himself nice and solid and consolidate that 3rd place here, Rudy.
Yeah, third, maybe even pop up in a second here. No, not in the end, but he is pretty close. So I reckon, yeah, with Cheese Thrower, I reckon it's possibly the top of the hard pace. That said, yeah, no, actually, I have been wrong before erring on where the pace is. I think I was notably wrong with Queensland Wrestler last round, but yeah, I think that is probably where the pace is. That said, Braxton Stancliffe being another 4/10 off the back of Thrower doesn't quite do the maths in my head. Braxton's quick. I definitely would have picked him as the quicker of the two Red Bull drivers. So interesting to see what that gap is. No, actually, another driver I want to point to, I haven't seen in Super 2 for a long while, that goes back to, I think, the Winter Series, as it were, last year, is Nether Elmian.
Yeah, did have him on camera. He's just entering the pits at the moment. Great to see him back in the sim. Start of the year wasn't even the end of last year. He was a little bit down, demotivated about some of his racing. But it's good to see him back out there giving it a crack. Even if he is probably a little bit further down than what he'd like and not as quick as what he'd prefer, but it's certainly good to see him out there, and hopefully he just has a good night of racing as opposed to doing some admin work and preparing stuff for commentary. So hopefully he has a good fun night out there. Currently sitting in 12th place, looking to find a little bit of extra time. So he cuts off in 9th place. Had John Slow move up to 8th, but that's because I think Dane has dropped out of the server. He will slot back into, I think, 2nd or 3rd, Rody, correct me if I'm wrong. It'll be one of those 2 positions.
He was sitting... We say that now. I think he would be somewhere around 3rd, 4th. I can't quite remember where he was sitting. I remember that it was Termo clear ahead of this next pack, but I can't remember exactly what time he was on. He was somewhere in that top 3, 4 bucket, though.
Yeah, so he won't get too far away. So it looks like he's just going to wait till the end of the session to get back in after that internet drama. But McLean at the moment in P7, just 3/4 of a tenth away off his personal best. So if he does put in a solid final sector, he can improve. But to move up a position ahead of Hans, he's going to need to find good 3.5 tenths. Again, he's actually lost a little bit of time on himself there. Hans travelling slowly. Looks like he's going to go back to the pits. We've got Noah Turra now in 5th, but that's of course Dane not in the server for long. See how he's travelling out at the moment. And far away, 4,000 of a second away from his personal best, 3 tenths off the fastest time. Comes into Lol. Powers early is what he'd prefer, but he's out of there quite smoothly. Down to the 2nd speed. He's found 2 tenths on his own time, so 4 tenths away from ultimate time. But if he's able to make the final sector, final stick here, find himself ahead of Braxton Stanley. A bit of a wobble on the exit of the final corner to the line, and he improves to P4. And Braxton behind him does not improve. Well, he did improve.
He does improve, but not enough.
So that's Braxton done and dusted. And now we got that's McLean coming to the line. So he'll finish in P7 on screen, but P8 once Dane comes back into the server. Who else? Is there anyone else on a lap at the moment? Doesn't look like that is so. It looks like that is the qualifying session. So Termo on pole, Cheese alongside him with Peter Thrower and Noah Turra rounding up the top 4. So going to be an interesting one here. I reckon the top 3, certainly the top 2, I reckon Cheese and Termo on that softer tyre, Roadie.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that actually. Yeah, like Cheese has been a definite good mid-pack runner so far this season. He hasn't quite had the outright pace. Granted, we have seen a couple of guys obviously not qualify. Coxy being a good example of what we've seen through front runners this season. And obviously where the hard side split comes into as well. But yeah, I tend to believe that maybe top 2, if not maybe top 3 on softs. Again, Pete's been quick and he is a little quicker than Cheese on average. So maybe that's where I'm guessing, yeah, somewhere in that top 3, 4 is probably where that soft hard split occurs. I believe it's 3 or 4 tenths from Termo back to that 2nd, 3rd, 4th group, and another 4 tenths back from there. I think maybe that 2nd, 4 tenths back group is maybe where the soft hard split is.
Yeah, we'll certainly find out quite quickly, I reckon, on that opening lap, who's on what. Have ticked over to the warm-up session. Number of drivers now just waiting for the session to go green. In fact, it has gone green, but Hans just sitting there waiting, and he lights the rears up there. So I'd imagine we'll see a number of drivers here, Road, just practicing their starts. Coxy's probably out there, and a number of the drivers that have their qualifying penalties probably just need to going out there just to reacquire themselves with the car after that 10-minute break. But we will see a number of drivers, I'm sure, practicing their starts, which will be pretty important around here, Rody, because even though, again, it's like Simmons Plains, this circuit, bit of a bull ring, times are very, very close, and if a driver in front doesn't make a mistake, it can be quite difficult to pass if they're nailing their exits.
Yeah, so like as I said earlier, in case in point for the referring to, I think it was an ASC race or the last year or the year before where there was, I can recall the commentary from Stairs and I think Madbird where there was 2 cars side by side for an entire lap. That's not wholly uncommon to this to a track like this, because there is room to be too wide everywhere. as long as you're comfortable with the guy you're racing with, you kind of need to set those passes up with more than one turn in thought. You need to sort of have, at best, say coming into turn one, you get in there at turn one, then you have to hold them as you come through with the flip flops up the hill. You got your best chance of maybe coming out with a lead, either the run out of, I think it's turn 5, or under braking into the bowl. But you've got to set these things up early. And yeah, so your start's going to be important, especially along with whoever's on the road alongside you. It does favour starting on the inside, but if you can get a decent start when you're on the outside, you can come across and kind of close off that gap. And that's the thing as well, with the nature it is, for some of the guys that maybe a bit further up than they would normally not be because of how qualifying has turned out, just with the lack of the drivers who weren't qualifying, this is their best chance to get a good result, because those guys at the back are going to start 20 seconds back. They will probably catch the group eventually. But if you're thinking short term and you just want a good result, this is your best chance. So for the guys sitting, we've lost most of the times because people are now out there lapping. But people like McLean, newcomer John Slow, that sort of group is probably this is the best chance to have a real notable result. Speaking of drivers as well, I've just seen Crackers arrived as well, so that brings up to 22 drivers for tonight's racing. Yeah, it's maybe a good chance to try and get a good result a notable result in this first race. But no, your start is important, because this can turn into a bit of follow the track. If I continue walking a little bit further, we had the ATCC race here last year, and this will be, I reckon, one driver who's going to do pretty well here notably is Kempy. And Kempy, much to the annoyance of people around him, has become impossible to pass. He's been to the Nether School of Defensive Driving, Nether is here, so maybe he'll get the chance to show Coxy how it's done as well. But what it will do is all you have to do is know where to not so much pull off, but where to drive defensively around this track and hold a car off. The race I'm talking about was the near full length of the 50-minute race between Will Devonish and Scott Nolan. And Will Devonish was a little bit quicker than Nolan in that race. I think Will was in the Merc and Nolan was in a VL. But Nolan knew where to be defensive against Will, and where Will's strengths were and where to play against it. And despite the fact that Will was quicker than the two cars in front of him, Will was stuck behind Nolan for essentially the entire race. They both pitted on the same lap, coincidentally, and great frustration on Will, because he couldn't do anything with his pace. But that's the other key as well, is you need to build those passes early, you need to work at them. But as a driver in front, you can still hold someone off if you're good at defensively driving. So I'll stop for a minute and give you a chance to step in.
Yeah, defensive driving is part of it, car placement, crucial, but sometimes you got to know when to just defend a little bit and protect your line, and sometimes, especially around here, you have brought it up a couple of times, you can go side by side the whole lap, but it's certainly not the fastest way to travel around this circuit. So you have to pick your places where to pass, and you've got to get it done decisively, otherwise you will find yourself a little bit further behind the 8 ball. Even if you do move up a position, you might find yourself a couple seconds away from where you want to be, simply because you were battling a little bit too hard and side by side for a couple of laps. And we've actually got a car on their roof on the pit straight there. It was one of the orange cars, looks like it was Hans, I think, is gone for a bit of an adventure. Yeah, I think he's just centered the pit entry, because there is a ramp there.
Yes.
And up he goes, and there you go, doing a bit of a couple backflips, knocks out one of the Smith & Sons boards, and then scrapes along on his roof, and gives everybody a show of the ZB Commodore under tray there. So, bit of an adventure there. Hopefully that doesn't happen in the race for anybody, or in supercars next week.
No, he achieved the same thing in practice earlier, so I think he has got his eye in for that. The other point as well, in terms of getting airborne, which we might see during the race, is that the inside curve on the last turn is actually somewhat steep for these cars. And if you're coming with a decent rate of knots and a decent sort of angle or trajectory over the thing, you can roll your car off the last corner curve as well. So, we're interested to see how, I don't see it happening maybe too often in the race, because you've got to really be trying to get the car up and over there. But if anyone does, it's a straight trip into the gravel trap down the bottom end of the circuit, and probably into the wall, and that's going to hurt.
Well, not only that, but you could find yourself going down or finding yourself into the alternate pit entry there, which has hopefully been spoken about in the driver's briefing. Obviously, if you get shoved down there, you can go down there, but you cannot gain time. There's no on the alternate pits. We'll just have a little bit of a look here. You can see there, drivers can drive through it, but only if they get knocked down there or they spin in there. And they can't gain an advantage because, well, you feed right back on the racing line right at the braking point. So a bit dangerous.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to have other guys joking that they could use the old pit lane as a rally joker lap, but no, as you said, if anyone goes down there and doesn't lose a quantifiable amount of time doing so, especially tries to feed on back at turn 1 at pace with traffic around them, they will have the book thrown at them.
Alright, so we've ticked over to the race session. Hopefully everybody is in. And surprised not to see anybody that is... Oh, actually no, they can't. They have to wait for the formation lap to start actually, but we will see. So just wait here. The formation lap is underway. Who's going to be the first of these drivers in the pits to get to? It's Higo. He's the first one out. And he'll be the first one out of the pits. Anyway, Rody, lead us through the grid for race number 1. The ASR Super 2 Championship here from Barbagallo.
Alrighty, so starting off pole for this race with a great time, a good 3:10s up on the next car is Termo in the Volvo car. Let's go through this quickly. There's a short lap. Second is Cheese in the first of the Nissans with Peter Thrower in third. Fourth is Licciardo, that's where he dropped in after his disconnecting qualifying with Noah Turret in fifth. Darren Kemp was starting out of sixth for this Castrol team. With Braxton Tankliff in 7th. Hans Brunswick returned and will start from 8th position in the first race with McLean Lynette in 9th. With John Slow debutant rounding out the top 10. Lockie Lock starts in 11th, just ahead of Taipan in 12th. With the sister Shell car in 13th of Justin Cecil. Nether Relmian returns in P14 in the 23 red car, normally run by Glenn. With Josh Watson, hashtag not last in 15th. Cracker is back, missing qualifying in 16th position. Steve Warwick, starting from the lane, along with Daniel Cox. Ben Hall starting on track in 19th. Freakish in the pit lane, as well as Nathan Higginson and Matt Cecil.
Alright, and actually did see something in the stewards chat already, so a number of drivers have been busted for crossing the line again. But drivers now forming up onto the grid. And I see Cracker down the back there angling his car to the middle of the road. And here we go. Lights are ablaze. Away we go. No jump starts here in this one, but a good launch from Termo, good launch from Licciardo. He's going to have to go the long way to go into turn number 1. Do they get through there cleanly? It looks like for the most part they do. Everyone's through there nice and clean. Termo leads. Then we have Cheese, Licciardo and Kemp. And Termo a little bit wide there at turn 4. A little bit of contact with Licciardo and Cheese at turn 4 as well. But through they go, and Termo looks like he's built up a solid advantage already.
Yeah, just looking back, the cars in pit lane have been released with...
we've got contact between Licciardo and Cheese. And I don't think Cheese would be too pleased with that.
No.
And a bit of Morse code between them, but probably expect something, an incident chat a little bit later there, as Cheese goes a bit defensive. Kempy looking to get a move done. And, well, they've all sort of outbroke themselves there. Licciardo's gone a little bit wide as well. Cheese will look for a move. And a little bit further back, a number of drivers also looking to set up a move. Cheese up the inside at turn 1. Does he get the job done?
He don't stop, but he won't quite have it. He's going to have to make one too wide up through turns 2, 3 and 4 here. Hopefully Dane gives him room on the outside of 4. If he can hold there, then he's got a chance to make a pass into the bowl. He's just dropping back point 1, but he's possibly going to have another look at the back of the Big Mate racing car into the bowl, if not the last one.
So not too much field spread. They've stayed fairly compact at the moment, but Termo in the lead, 1.2 seconds ahead of Licciardo. But Kemp's starting to fall into the clutches of Peter Thrower now, who didn't have an ideal start. Got Hans up 2 positions already, but he's got Braxton Stancliffe and Noah Turra battling behind him. Stancliffe, bit of tram tracking going on there. Just lost the rears. But lives to fight another day. 56.5 for him. These guys all in the 56s. Those guys there. Thrower 55.5. He's ahead of Kemp now. So recovering the position nicely. And Termo 55.6 in the lead. Dane Licciardo 55.4. So he may be on the soft tyres. We'll soon find out in the next lap or two, that's for sure. In fact, that gap's come down again. I would say Licciardo on the soft.
So yeah, with the amount of effort Dane being very early there, you've got to probably watch the soft just into contact between Braxton Stancliffe and Hans Brunswick. Yeah, with Dane's pace, he's going to have a go on those softs, but he's going to make sure he doesn't push it too hard. Termo, probably a slightly better idea on whether his tyres will last or not. Dane's a little bit more reckless at times, I suppose, with his strategy. That said, he has done a lot of practice here, so I wouldn't be surprised if he has done the planning already. But yeah, the way looking maybe these two on softs with the rest of it all behind, either managing softs or on those hards. I mentioned earlier the race between Noah Turra and Braxton Stancliffe. I want to keep an eye on that across the racing tonight, because those two, both younger drivers, are both sons of active drivers in our league. Both have great one-lap pace, but both haven't quite got a chance to show themselves across the race on a holistic sense yet.
Just saw Turra get ahead of Stancliffe there. Stancliffe looks to be struggling quite a bit with the brakes there. I reckon he's just using that left foot, if he's a left foot brake, or the right foot, just braking a little bit too heavily, a bit too late. And I'd imagine with the way he's been coming into the corners, he's running ABS for sure. But out in front, Termo leads the way, just ahead of Licciardo. Gap now 0.3 of a second. Termo 55.5 that time around compared to 55.3. Did see on the last lap Licciardo 54.8, so that's definitely soft tyre pace. Now, let's say if they were to pit, they'd probably come out around about Higginson, Cecil and Warwick, about 29 seconds, maybe a little bit further down. Of course, they won't need to add fuel with these shorter races. And just the change of tyres. But Termo, for the most part, is quite cool and doesn't generally crack under pressure, so Dane will have to make the move stick. Termo leading the way at the moment. Looks like on this lap they've dropped a little bit of time to Cheese, or Cheese has dropped a little bit of time to them, I should say. 55.5, yeah, these front runners low 55s and 54s. About half a second drop there for Cheese. He's starting to fall into the clutches of Peter Thrower, but after a poor start road, he's starting to make a little bit of inroads back to where he started in third.
So the beat did obviously drop from his starting position of third. You see something there? Or?
Yeah, a little bit of side-by-side action between Termo and Licciardo. So I'm just going to cut to a replay. So Termo, actually it might have just been the camera view there, but Termo did come in a little bit deep. They're side-by-side coming out of the bowl. Termo not really going to fight it here. Licciardo going to have to force it up the inside. Going to go side by side around the final corner. Termo will be able to get on the power a little bit earlier, and he'll have the run coming in the final corner. That's allowed Cheese to get right back in the game here as Licciardo launches it up the inside. Termo giving him the space. But if he can just hold on, which he can't, Termo would have had the inside to turn 4 if he could just hold on around the outside there. Licciardo in the lead for now, but now it's Termo. He's going to be the one with the slipstream.
Not only that, you're right, that racing has backed the pair of them back up into Cheese and Peter Thrower. So it's turning into a 4-car battle here from what was 2. Yeah, Termo was sort of doing the right things for a good part of that battle. I saw into turn 1 he moved across a little bit. He wasn't even braking, but he picked a central line to block any chance of Dane going right at the inside, and he was doing what he could, but Termo's not going to stick the elbows out if he doesn't have to. Termo is a big picture thinker when it comes to these races. So if they're both on soft, Termo's got a number he has to drive to mentally to keep his tyres lasting the entire race, and he's probably at this point trying to stick to that more than trying to race and actually take up positions in the early part of this race.
Yeah, he does seem to be driving a little bit smoother than the other guys around him as well at this stage. Darren Kemp just dropped a little bit off the back of that pack, even with that battling, so he's on his own at the moment. Noah Turra actually got himself ahead of Hahn, so he's gone for a bit of an adventure, and he's in the fence, the newly installed fence, because if you do go far enough wide on this version of the circuit, you get stuck down the back end of a cliff. That, well, it really screws your race. That's going to screw Hahn's race, but not as bad as getting disqualified. He's also got a puncture there as well, so late inclusion, he might be regretting that decision, at least at the moment. But that elevates Netherelmian and Cracker into 13th and 14th. We just see Cracker run off the road, and Nether's going to say thank you very much. I'll take that 13th place back. They're a little ways off the back of Taipan, and John Slow is behind both the DJR team Penske cars at the moment. And at the front of that, there's also McLean there in 8th place.
Yeah, so good little battle pack here. There's 3 or 4 cars. Obviously, Taiping now trying to jump in on that as well, so make it 5 cars. But yeah, it's interesting to see some of the battles that are falling out across the field. There was a good battle early on between the guys leaving the pit lane, but they've all started to stretch out their own pace. Coxy's a leader of that train at the moment. He's about 5-second gap on Warwick, so I suggest Coxy is looking at the soft as well. Yeah, no, good to see there's already some good battles across the field, and there is some racing going on to be had.
Yeah, definitely some racing going on, but there is also some clear gaps. So the gap between 8th and 7th place, about 5 seconds, and then this battle pack's got a gap of 4 seconds over Netherelmian and Cracker as well. And then there's another gap at 7 seconds to Coxy. Coxy's actually lost a little bit of time. He actually had the gap to the leaders at about 24 seconds. And that's actually ballooned out to 29. I can hear a car in the pit lane, so that'll be Brunswick leaving the pits there. Out of Bonnet. See John Slow looking to get ahead of one of the Penske cars, yet ahead of Justin Cecil. And he finds himself now back where he started in P10. So nice little battle here for 8th place. A little bit further ahead. Kempy just starting to fall probably a little bit into the clutches of Noah Turra a little bit. And Braxton Stancliffe, well, those 3 guys just a little bit out on their own at the moment. But they're hoping to play a little bit of the long game, I'd imagine, and get themselves into the race later on. Pit icon up for Peter Thrower, so either he hasn't changed his strategy options in the default or in the setup menu, or you see him in the pits for a set of tyres, which would be a bold call, but something we'll have to wait and see. Dane's just skipped ahead at the front, 2 seconds ahead, and seeing in the chat there, Nathan Higginson's blown his engine, he double shifted, and something that can happen with G-Series paddles, and unfortunately that's his race done and dusted.
Yeah, I was about to mention that I saw he go out while we were looking at Hans in the pit lane, and that answer.
And they're in.
Cheese and Thrower both in.
Thrower are in, so they're figuring that okay, the tyres aren't going to last for them, and they're going to pit. So put some new tyres on now. Hopefully go quickly and get themselves out in front of the other guys. So that's something we'll have to wait and see. Either it'll pay off big time for them at the end of the race, or they'll find themselves mired a little bit further away from the leaders if they can make their tyres last than what they'd like. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. And cut to Dane, still 2 seconds ahead of Turmo. His pit crew not getting ready at all. And Peter Throw's undone all that, like coming into the pits too quickly, I'd imagine.
They're coming in too quickly. He was moving up on the back of Cheese as they came into the lane, so I'm guessing he was probably just over as he entered the lane. I'm a little interested to see what that means for the 2 frontrunners now, because they're running quick, especially Dane's running quicker pace than 3rd and 4th who just pitted. They feel they need to pit, and he doesn't. So is there something in the car setup, or are we going to see a couple of very late race tyre blowouts?
There isn't too much you can change on the setup outside of steering lock, so if you do have aggressive steering lock, you are applying more steering at a sharper rate, which can lead to increased front tyre wear. But just having a look at the sectors at the moment. So 55.5 was the last lap for Licciardo. I have to go all the way down now to 12th place for Cheese. I have to see their first sectors on this lap actually, because it's just reset itself. Couldn't quite work out there with Dane Licciardo's time, so I didn't get enough time there. 19.2 first sector for Licciardo, and what is it for Cheese on this lap once Live Races does its little thing and updates? So waiting here at 12.3, so a little bit closer, but he's going to need to find a little bit of extra time there. He's got to find about 3 seconds or 4 seconds if he wants to nab himself prime position, provided Licciardo pits. But of course, the longer you go, the more your tyres get worn. He's got Matt Cecil off the road there, and he's going to hinder his teammate. No, he's going to get out of the way there. Bit of front end damage as well on Cecil's car. Cecil's being a lap down. Turbo 3 seconds off the pace, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out now. Whether Licciardo stays out and just conserves or not. But the gap between Cheese, Licciardo, 32.9 seconds as of the last split. Of course, that will update with our 34.2. So Dane's pressing on pretty hard out there. Cheese not driving at the optimal speed with those new tyres. So, bit interesting there to see one of the race cars a little bit wide.
Speaking of tyres, we've also got Darren Kemp in the pits as well, so he's going to pick up some new tyres. So,
and Crackers
he was pitting. I just see him in. So he's obviously here. He only jumped in warm up, so he wasn't familiar on the whole argument over softs and hards. I'm guessing he jumped out on soft and then had the same realisation everyone else has come to with a bit of forethought attached to it. But yeah, one of the guys that are now pitting that are on the soft tyres and looking at the pace that Dane and Turmo have got, I don't know. We're not far from the race, but I'd really like to see what their fuel where their tyre wear numbers are at right now.
Well, at this stage, if you click race and press Control D, it will come up on your screen. Obviously, I can't do that when I'm broadcasting. If you click race and then go over to them, as a spectator, it will show. But Dane's pace at the moment is pretty good. If he's in the mid to high 55s, he's not really losing time at the moment. So really, Cheese has got to fight. He's got to go faster, Cheese. He's got to be in the 54s or the very low 55s for the next 3 or 4 laps. Not that it's going to matter now, actually. He's had those chances. Looks like the Licciardo getting ready. The cog is up, and he's pitting on this lap. So I don't think Cheese has done enough. In fact, I'd say he's lost time. So I'm just going to go back and find out where Cheese is. And he's caught the back of Nether. Big dive at turn 1. Nether's seen him coming and giving him space. 55.5 in that last lap for Cheese. He did make up a couple tenths, but not nearly enough. So gone for the undercut. Hasn't worked for him, or it won't work for him, provided Dane comes into the pits and doesn't speed.
I'm interested actually looking at those numbers that you're giving me. It's a good thing I wasn't betting on this race because I could do something to our train at the moment. What I can tell you is Tomo's wear rates on the most crucial tyre, front left tyre, were well less than what Dane's are. So I reckon Tomo might have managed to, as I said, big picture thinking. He's thinking about the driving to a tyre number for this race. I think at this stage, Tomo might have it enough to go what we believe is on soft for the entire race. But yeah, Dane in, I think we're going to see Noah Tara in as well if we haven't already.
Well, Noah hasn't pitted. But at this stage, with only 4 laps to go, you might as well just cruise around out there and see if you can get away with it. But it's going to be quite close, actually, between Licciardo and Cheese. But Cheese, those first 2 laps out of the pits are going to cost him. There's Dane just ahead of him as Hans lets Cheese go. If his first 2 laps, particularly his first flying lap out of the pits, was half a second better, he would have been in the box seat to get ahead of him. But didn't do it, wasn't fast enough, and well, now he's going to have to fight his way through. There's a bit of contact between Licciardo and Taipan has forced Taipan off the road.
That was ambitious from Dane. Like, there wasn't really room there to put the car inside. It's a bit 50-50. I know Taipan might be happy though because that's put him off. Oh, they got it in front actually. Both the DJ Arnison's getting involved in a bit of contact, and
they've all gone.
Lock. That was awkward.
Licciardo's got a good run on the second of them, and he's going to move his way up to 5th. Noah Tara's still on out there, and McLean and Slow, I think that is. Bit of contact, they're both off, so we'll cut to a replay there. Oh, yes! So the second of the DJR cars just losing it on the way in. I think he just clipped the grass. And then McLean making a move into turn 1. Well, actually, looks like Slow outbroke himself, and so did McLean.
Yeah.
So just mistakes on both of them. Cheese now behind Justin Cecil. He's actually lost time out of all that, trying to avoid all the carnage in front of him as Justin Cecil runs off the road. I don't know if there was contact there, and around he goes. So yellow flags are out. Licciardo now back up to third, but he's 27 seconds off the lead and 17 seconds off Tara. If Tara is in, I would have coasted with three laps to go. You stay out there, just try and coast and save the tyre, because 17 seconds is a lot of time. But Turmo, you said it earlier, may have been playing the long game. Looks like he has been. You wouldn't pit at this stage. His pit crew aren't ready. 27 seconds in the lead. He can take it easy here, and he's going to take a comfortable win, provided he doesn't make a mistake or a tyre fails.
Yeah, that's all he's going to do is last another two laps. And the tyre numbers that Dane had when he pitted, he was looking at I think about a 0.15. There's about 50% wear left on your front left. Tomo was sitting at about 30% at the same point in time. So, yeah, as long as he's not pushing that front left too hard, the gap he's got, he can afford to. And like, he's already lost, I think, 5 seconds in this lap, but that doesn't matter. He's only got another 2 laps to go. He can hemorrhage time, and he should still be pretty good. All he has to do is just not get a puncture, and it'll be that front left-hand tyre. And all he's going to do is manage that, and he's good. So, like, Dane, obviously, fresh tyres out there, fastest lap of the race, 54.702. And we're talking about actually drivers coming back through the field as well. One that we talked about big picture thinking, but it's actually worked out for him a little better than we sort of planned. Daniel Cox is sitting in 5th.
Yep, done a really good job. Finds himself ahead of championship leader Darren Kemp, who has pitted. I don't think Daniel Cox has. So, vital for his championship hopes. We'll lose out a little bit of points to Licciardo, of course, but considering where he started in the pit lane, he's driven a fairly good race outside of that mistake we didn't see, because he was 24 seconds off the lead, if you do recall, and then lost about 5 seconds the next time we saw him. So he has had an adventure somewhere, but still, it's got a lap and a half, lap and a third to go to hold off Kempy. I don't think he's going to do it. Kempy on fresher tyres, but still, great recovery drive from him. Kemp up the inside. McLean's got himself a drive-through penalty. I wonder what that is.
I believe.
And got a car in the pits. That's Ben Hall. And got Lachlan Locke off the road in 4th place. He's going to have to watch himself here. He's got an angry pack behind him. But just cut ahead now. Turmo out of the final corner. Strategic masterstroke from Turmo, and he will take race 1 from Barbagallo, about 20 seconds ahead of Dane Licciardo, the first of the drivers that did pit. We do know there's a big battle taking place for 4th place now. Licciardo out of the final turn. He'll take 2nd, but there could be penalties to come from this one for him. Cheese will come home in 3rd. He'll be ruining that first couple laps out of the pits. Kemp has come home. Well, he's just made a move for 4th place at the death. Vital for his championship hopes to extend his lead over Cox. And he'll come home in 4th, up 2 spots. Locke will come home in 5th, so he was another driver that didn't elect to pit, and it worked out for him, up 6 spots from where he started. Coxy up 12. Good start from the pit lane. John Slow up in 7th place, up 3 spots as well. I don't think he pitted as well. Brody, correct me if I'm wrong. Braxton Staker home in 8th. Never top 10 on his return. Another one of the drivers that elected not to pit, and it's worked out for him. So it's good to see him back out on a racetrack, and he's nabbed himself a top 10 ahead of some pretty good competition in Noah Turra and Steve Warwick, Taipan, and Peter Thrower, who had a little bit of a nightmare there. I'm not sure what happened. Well, I can't remember what happened to him in the back half of that race, but finds himself down in 14th. Freakish home 15th. Matt Cecil home in 16th. Josh Watson, hashtag not last once again, finds himself ahead of Brunswick, Hall, McLean, and Cracker, with Nathan Higginson the only retirement in this one. And, well, Rody, another thing that's just been brought to my mind in the live chat, Nether will start on the front row as well. So he's come back, he's played a strategy masterstroke just like our winner Turmo here. He's going to find himself leading the field in race 2 here.
Yeah, interesting. Because he's going to start second alongside Noah Taro, who had decent pace in the first part of that race, but had to stop to get new softs. So whether he's going to change his approach to the second race or whether he's sticking to that and going to try and improve that strategy, I don't know. But Nether, yeah, it'll be interesting because it has been a while since Nether's been in the seat. That said, this year I think we are starting to see more elbows up Nether than we've seen, and that's saying something because Nether is the king of defensive driving over here in ASR. Anyone who's good at it is reported to have been to his school for it. But like he's got options here. If he's just out there to have a good time, and I'm not throwing any shade his way if he is, then he'll sort of naturally fall back through to a position where he's comfortable and then start when there was up from there. But he's starting from second. If he really wants to and he gets a good start, he's fully within his rights to defend as if it was the last lap of the race for the next 21 laps and do the best he can to hold off some of these guys. And he might have a bit of fun in that because it's going to be a mere case of, again, seeing those guys who, can put those passes on, can think a couple of corners ahead, because Nether knows what he's doing. He might be a little rusty because it has been a while since he's been in the seat, but at the core value, Nether knows how to drive defensively. He knows how to get under your skin, although that's not the intention. He knows how to get under your skin and knows how to get it so that you're the one that makes the mistake trying to pass him.
Yeah,
So
knows how to place a race car, which if you can do that, it certainly makes life very, very difficult. And strategy and keeping it clean and not making mistakes is especially around circuits like Barbagallo here, Simmons Plains. If you don't make a mistake and other drivers do, you'll find yourself in a good position, and he's done that just like Turmo has, and just like Lockie Lock as well, found himself up a few spots as well. There's a number of drivers that elected that no-stop strategy, and it worked out beautifully. Going to make race number 2 and 3, Rody, very, very interesting. You're really going to need to... Well, those drivers that did pit, they're going to have to think long and hard. Well, do we just have to drive more conservatively and not pit? Or perhaps need to take more risk in pitting and drive a little bit harder?
yeah, the interesting argument would be with some of those guys who pitted. Did they run hard up until I think Dane was a late pitter, so if he ran fully 10-10 qualifying laps or near enough to up until mid race pit stop rather than an end of race pit stop, and then went another lap, 11 laps again or about that, he might do better off. But that's the thinking you've got to have. And even for those guys, who pitted in the middle of the race, was that a planned stop or was it something where they were just wanting to tire you through the race as what they're running at and went, I won't make it, I'm going to call it now. And for those guys, the same argument is, it might help them to push that extra 1 or 2 tenths from what they were already doing, actually try and achieve, maybe 9 tenths, get a little bit of margin so you don't do anything too silly, but push it 9 tenths for those 11 laps pit, then push for another 11 laps with your 9 tenths, and then you might find yourself a little further up the field. So that, we're going to see strategies on that. Some guys came through the field either managing softs or potentially on hards, but that said, based on Tomo's early pace, I think we've proven that, much like Phillip Island, if you can manage your softs, you're good. So that's the question is can more of these guys manage their softs? And case in point is a good example, although we didn't see him up there in the first race, as I mentioned at Phillip Island, Hans Brunswick. So if he can get around the soft strategy, the next race or two, we might see him a bit further up. Obviously, he's going to start a bit further back because of his off in that first race. But it's by no means guaranteed that the next 2 results. Anything can still happen.
And then at the same time, it might be worth, if you are, Dane or Cheese again, just running the same strategy, because if Turmo is able to make it last, that's okay, but this time it's going to be starting in 10th place. So he's got traffic to deal with. He's not going to be able to run at his ideal pace. If you do run that strategy and run hard, you could find yourself with your main rival being caught in traffic, and you might be able to get that time back. So it does open up the door a little bit, but I think the ideal strategy is not to pit. But you can make the pit stop work, but you do need luck. So this second race will be very, very interesting. If you are going to continue on with that pit stop strategy, race 2, you could make it work, but Turmo has to get stuck in traffic, I'd say, for it to work. And you'd need to get that first lap for those guys is crucial. So if Dane, Peter, well, not so much Peter Thrower because that late drive through, yeah, with Cheese and Dane, if they do elect to do that pit stop strategy once again, same with Kemp, it's all up to that first lap and the race start. If they do elect to run that strategy, so it would be interesting to see if they do elect to do that, and we see a super aggressive sort of first opening couple of laps for them, or if maybe if we see things on that first lap and a half, 2 laps, and they're not racing as hard as we normally see, I think we can almost wrap it up and say they're changing their strategy. So it's going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, so as I said, there's a lot that can still happen in this race. We like to think now that the first race has been out of the way and some of this stuff has been set in stone. I think we can make the softs work without stopping. That it's easy to think that everyone will shift to that strategy, but yeah, anything can still work, and there is an element of luck and fortune that comes into these as well. Like Hans could have been further up front had he not spun off and then had to pit. That's what probably killed him that race. That's ended up putting him a lap down. But he's proven he can be there or thereabout. So yeah, it's hard to and making a call for who I think is going to be up there in the second race. Tomo's a good, comfortable bet, but I'm not going to suggest he's the only one with a chance of being up there because whether guys can adapt their strategies or alter their strategies and try and make it work, and especially for those guys who benefit from that reverse top 10. Noah Tara being a key example as well. He was achieving similar pace to Braxton in the early part of that race, and they weren't quite doing what Dane was doing, but they weren't too far off. They were in sort of the middle part to the back end of the top 10 until they pitted and had a couple of incidents there here and there. But this potentially could be Noah's race as well.
Could certainly be, but I think the man to watch for me, he did start from the pits, remember, and he also did the no-stop strategy and ended up finishing 6th place in the end, so he'll be ahead of all the key runners, is Daniel Cox. So here's another one. We've already seen that he can make his tyres last to the end, and he was able to run at fairly decent lap times for the most part. If he doesn't make a mistake in the race, and he's able to get through the first couple of laps cleanly, he could be the one that we're looking at the end, who could be taking race number 2. So he's in a very, very good position, starting from, I think he's starting 4th place, correct me if I'm wrong, Rudy, in this one, ahead of some of those key drivers like Dane and Turmo, who do have a bit of pace. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out for him, but if he can get away cleanly and have a good solid first lap, I reckon he's in the box seat.
Yeah, so Coxy will be starting 5th in this race, and in terms of the cars around him, he's got Wochenbach 1 behind, and then Darren Kemp 2 behind. In front, he's got John Sloan, Braxton Stancliffe. Braxton, we've already seen, he can start pretty well. John's off to his side, so I reckon probably John's a car he might be able to get possibly by turn 1. So it's like Braxton starting from 3rd, Tara starting from 1st, Coxy starting from 5th. Tomo's a bit further back, and some of the guys obviously further back with the guy starting at finishing at the front of the last race. Those sort of guys might not potentially make it too easy for him to get past, considering how much he kind of rolled them by in the first race. So that sort of rivalry might play benefit for the guys that start in front of Tomo. So there's a couple of guys that I think could do really well, but a lot of it will come out to the strategy, and a lot will come out to the luck of it as well.
Yeah. Either way, I can't wait for this second race. For a number of these runners, it could be a championship deciding moment, whether they get away cleanly and have a nice solid run, or they falter a little bit, go the wrong way with strategy, or get caught up in some incidents. We are getting to the more crucial parts of the season. Each race now becoming more and more important for these guys. Kemp, again, solid result. He'll lose points out to Dane Licciardo, but he finished ahead, crucially, of Daniel Cox in that last race. Only just. It could have been a lot better for Kempy, but he's still going to have a bit of an advantage out front in the championship. In fact, I will have a look and see if the points have been updated. Indeed, they have. So once again, thank you, Scott Nolan, for doing the points. And there it is. 886 plays 850. And it was a good race for Turmo, of course. He now moves on 829. Closest to Daniel Cox with that race win. Dane on 799. And he was only able to pick up 6 points on Darren Kemp in that last one. Good run for Cheese, though, seeing him move up or extend over Braxton Stancliffe. Matt Cecil's also dropped quite a bit. Well, I think he's dropped a couple spots there. Or at least one spot to Braxton in this one. Or after that last one, down to 7th place in the standings. And Peter Thrower as well. Not an ideal run for him. But thankfully for him, Cecil also dropped points. Alright. Ticked over to the race session. Everyone's quite eager to get out there and gone straight out to the grid, Brody.
Yeah, a lot of cars, almost all the cars are already sitting on the grid. We've still got probably about 20 seconds to go before they actually need to be on the grid. And I think everybody but Ben Hall is already out.
So either Ben Hall's missed the start, or he's just waiting. No, he's playing it cool. He's just left very, very late there. Gone out onto the grid. Let's I'll run us through the grid here for race number 2. And it will be Noah Turret leading away from pole position, which, well, he would have been hoping to be on the right-hand side, but unfortunately it is on the left. So he's going to have to get a good start over Nether, who'll be starting alongside him. Could see him back out there. Then we have Braxton Stancliffe starting in 3rd. He's in a good position to try and make his strategy work. Then we have John Slow in his first round in the group. A solid start from him. He'll be starting from 4th place in this one. Coxy starting in 5th. Really needs to get a good jump and get away here in this one. Lock will start in P6, good run from him and strategy call in race number 1. Darren Kemp will start from 7th with Cheese just behind him. Licciardo will start in 9th with our race 1 winner Turmo starting 10th. Justin Cecil in 11th with Steve Warwick. Rovar Lounge Racing starting in 12th place with Taipan just behind him. Peter Thrower, he'll be hoping to that drive-through penalty away and have a nice clean run here in race number 2 and move forward. Freakish will start in 15th place ahead of Matt Cecil. My apologies. And George Wilson hashtag last, starting from 17th place. We have Hans Brunswick starting in 18th. Expect him to move forward if he doesn't fence it at turn 4 again. Ben Hall starting in 19th. McLean starting in 20th after some late dramas there. He was running in the top 10 for quite a lot of that race there. Really good for him to move forward. Cracker will start 21st with Higginson after his engine failure in race number 1, starting from 22nd position. So here's another one we expect to see a little bit further forward in this one, provided he doesn't double downshift again.
That would be good, yeah.
Right, so now just waiting for the back end of the grid to form up. Just have a look up and down the field. No one's really angled their cars. A bit of a surprise. It is a very tight, very skinny circuit, or version of the circuit here. Yeah, there's actually quite a fair way back in his box. And he might be the one we're waiting on here.
Yeah, it might have been him. I was looking at Dane. He was pretty far out as well, but they are now ready to go.
Away we go. Now that looks like he's got a fairly decent jump. Little wheel spin. Looks like Dane in the background got a solid start as well. The second bite for Nether, no good. But through turn 1 they go. And Noah Turret will lead. Do they get through turn 1? Oh, Hans a little bit sideways there. Braxton Stancliffe up into second. But looks like for the most part they've gotten through the first half of the lap fairly safely.
Yeah, in fact, it would be worse there. Lachlan Locking an absolute terrible start off, I think, the second row of the grid. He plummeted at the field to it. Guys checking up 3 or 4 cars behind him, all into each other on the way into turn 1, and he's dropped back, I think, out of the top 10 at this point. Yeah, cars Dane's having to pass so far, not making it too easy for him. Just behind as well, Termo now already up to 6. And Dane currently trying to make a move on Coxy and then Nether.
Yeah, Coxy was just boxed in there. He had a decent run coming out of the bowl, but he was stuck behind Nether and Licciardo alongside him. Licciardo able to pick up a 2-for-1 deal there. And now Coxy's under threat from Turbo, so all those guys have had a really solid start in this one, and bump and bang between Turbo, Coxy and Nether through turn 1. They're going to go side by side through 2 and 3. Turbo gets the job done. Coxy looking to get that job done. He's going to have to move a long way at turn 4. He's not going to get that done, and well, he's going to get it done at turn 5 because he can't get the nose in, and now Kempy can take advantage of that. Also got John Slow and Cheese involved as well, and big dives all over the shop here. Told you great stuff. This is the pinnacle of Super 2 racing. We've got a car off there. That is the drive car of Freakish, unfortunately. Down to 21st, so it's down to 22nd now. Also got a car going slow in the back there, but Tara leads, followed by Braxton Stancliffe and Dane Licciardo. Turbo is in 4th, not too far away. Coxy now has been released, but he's got Kemp right behind him. Now we'll see it, we should see, I reckon, here, Rody. A bit of a mastery of defensive driving with Nether. Hopefully, with his eye in just a little bit, and we'll see a bit of a trolley train in behind him here.
Yeah, now that they had the first lap also racing out in the way, and those who are really being ambitious with their dives are getting past Nether. That said, Cheese is the inside into the bowl, and Nether will give him room. We're at the point where the cars coming to the back of Nether are those of equivalent or not too much different pace to him, so he can start to go for proper defensive moves without the risk of getting caught up in something. So yeah, I reckon the next couple of laps we're going to see, as you mentioned, a bit of a trolley train starting behind Nether Elming.
He's made life very, very difficult, even though Cheese had the inside run and a bit of an overlap on him the whole way down. And a bit of a dive from Slow, and Nether thankfully saw him coming. I don't think he'd be too pleased with that, old Steve. And he's going to lose out another position to another Steve Warwick. He's had a nice start here, up 3 spots, and finds himself now in the top 10. But it would be interesting though, Rody, to see if we do see a lot of these guys pit, because if they do, Steve's already bought himself a little bit of time here in this one, as we've got a yellow flag.
Max Cecil around in the background off the turn 5.
Also got John Slow a little bit wide. There's another position for Steve Warwick, so Warwick is on a roll. But I was just about to say, Nether Elming's bought himself a little bit of time here regarding strategy. If the guys in front of him do keep the same strategies once again, because he was able to hold them for a little bit, and will buy him time for later on in the race if he does do the no-stop strategy and the guys in front do the one-stop strategy. A little bit further back on Higo, adventurous line over the curve there, as he and Thrower duke it out. Also got Lockie Lock watching on. Best seat in the house in that one, but now they've got a deal with Steve DeVries in P10.
Yeah, they don't. I think they've both been. I saw that back in the lap. They're both pushing, I think, very hard, trying to get back to the spots I felt they were earned after losing them in that first race. Here you go, very creative driver. He will throw 10-10s at it without being. Like, you need to tell him when to back it off at times. So and Thrower, normally he's a somewhat reserved driver, but if he feels like he's warranted a spot, he'll go there and get it. So. The way these two are racing, yeah, it's gonna be a rock and a hard place, because they're up the back of Taipan, who is in turn up the back of Nether, and Nether's not going to let Taipan through with any ease. So the only way they're going to chance of getting past is trying to go for passing 2 cars at once, and that never works. So this is the start of the trolley train.
Yeah, this is the trolley train here. Oh, here go! He had a good run out of the final corner, so all checking up behind Nether there, and couldn't quite make it stick into turn 1 as he got a little bit too loose, something he does too often. But yeah, these guys now stuck behind Nether in a section of the track that you can't really pass at. Taipan is, well, no, he hasn't got the good exit there coming into the bowl. And he's going to send it anyway. Nether sees it coming and has to relinquish, but he's outbroken himself as Taipan. And Steve DeVries has got ahead on him and gave him the space and then took it straight back.
Yeah, he's lucky that Pete throws far enough back. Pete, you're not going to make that work!
Oh dear, I don't think Steve would be too pleased with that, but he saw it coming, and thankfully, smart driving, smarter heads prevail there. That could have been a massive train wreck with 3 or 4 cars there. That would have been Tenerife all over again. But they all live to fight another day. We do have a change of position up at the front though, as see Cracker trying to let these guys towards the front go. But we have seen Braxton Stancliffe lose out to Dane Licciardo, and Dane now less than a second away from Noah Tara. And well, Turbo not too far off the lead, 3.5 seconds away. But I'd say he's doing the no-stop strategy again, just lapping at his pace, while Licciardo is doing his best at setting heaters and trying to drive away, but he's got a bit of work to do if he's pitting again here, Brody.
Yeah, so it's like, for these two at the front, I suppose the 3 at the front, they need track position. That's the way they're going to win this race against each other, track position. They need to be in first, so no one needs to do his best to hold first. Yeah, ideally you don't lose too much speed at his end doing so, but if Noah loses time if Noah loses spot to Dane here, he's not getting it back because they're all on the same strategy. Granted, Dane didn't stop midway through that race like the rest of them did, but I think he will have awoken to that concept, and he will probably be using that in the second race now that he's decided he has to pit the tyres. So they're all going to pit within probably about a lap or 2 of each other at the most for a separation. So you need track position over each other because especially the undercut doesn't really quite work out, we found as well. So you need to be out there in front, and you also need to, if you can, within reason, it's the gamble. You need to stop the new softs, but you need to push those first softs a little longer to try and cover off the undercut.
We've got a big battle now taking place for 5th place. We've got Kempy, Coxy and Cheese all duking it out here. And I don't think Coxy's stopping, so if Kempy is, he's got to get a move on. Same with Cheese. A bit further back, Steve Warwick doing a really good job here. Up to 8th place, slowly edging away from John Slow, and Taipan is coming under attack from Brunswick. So Nether has dropped down towards the back end of that battle pack and out of the top 10, but he's still not too far away. And again, if those guys in front of him do have to pit, only finds himself 19 seconds off the lead, and was about 36 to 37 or 8 seconds, around that range. About 35 to 38, 39 seconds for a pit stop. So he'll find himself in a decent position as he goes for a bit of an adventure over the rise there. Pretty easy to do in these cars, not too much rear downforce. And a little bit further ahead, they're going 3 wide into turn 1 there.
Yeah, I missed what happened to Cheese, but he fell off the road somewhere coming out of the bowl, which dropped him back towards Taipan. And Hans' big recovery drive after he's probably, for his point of view, probably pretty dismal first race. He's having a big go, as he would put it. And yeah, he's already up in the top 10. He's having a look at the back of Cheese at the moment.
Also got a change for the lead, so Licciardo has got himself into the lead. Let's cut to a replay there. No, it's a little bit ways away there. But Tara not too far away. If Licciardo's pitting, he has to fly. Also seen Turmo move ahead of Braxton Stancliffe as well. So Stancliffe just starting to fall away just a little bit. We are at the halfway mark. We did see a number of the drivers, I think Cheese and Peter Thrower were notable drivers that pitted around about this time in race number 1. Now, I do reckon they'll go a little bit longer here in this one as Higginson and Taipan get out here at turn 1. I would imagine they'll go a little bit longer if they can and try and feed themselves out into a little bit of clear air, because if they do pit towards the front end of the field, Licciardo, Tara, Turmo, Stancliffe, they'll find themselves behind Hans, Brunswick, and round about Justin Cecil, 19th, 20th place. In fact, looks like Hans has had a bit of an off here in the last half a lap or so.
So that's off, or he might have pitted. I think I may have a look.
He may have pitted.
No. That'll be it. He's run it really far off track at the bowl. I don't think he had any help. He's just got a swapper on, which you're talking about in practice. He just made a cut over the grass on the apex side on the way out of the bowl, and it looped the rear of his car around, and they went and he'll be unhappy because that's the same sort of time loss he suffered in the first race. Luckily, no wall contact this time.
And what was interesting as well on that last lap, Turmo half a second faster than our race leader, 56.0 for Dane, Noah Turra a 56.3. So running at that, I guess, number seems to be working for Turmo, even lap time wise. If Dane is going to try, oh no, as Cheese has got himself a drive-through penalty. Hopefully that clears it. I do want to see the lap time that was set. So 55.8 for Turra, 55.7 for Licciardo, 55.8 for Turmo. So Turmo's been running at that number pretty much all race long. Licciardo and Turra, both of those guys, they've been up and down with their pace. They have been in 54s, have been in 55s, and have been in 56s. They've not been consistent enough, but at the same time, by going into the 54s and driving hard, they've also taken a bit out of their tyres. So that may take away that option of no stopping. Or if it does, or if they do try to take that risk, we may see them just fall off at the back end of the race. And with Turmo and his tyre saving and driving to a number, we may see him close up on the back of these guys if they do elect not to pit, as we see just off in the background there. That's Cheese coming in again, so he'll be spewing with that error. There's a Dane 55.5 on that last lap, 56.1 for Turra, 55.7 again for Turmo. So a bit of a metronome out there as Braxton now coming under threat from Coxy, who's driven away from Kemp in these last few laps.
Yeah, if we take a look behind the magician's curtain, as it were, just looking at the tyre health for the top 5 runners, the best two out there at the moment, not surprisingly, are Turmo and Coxy. The difference isn't so radically different like it was in the first race between where drivers like Dane and Noah are at compared to Turmo and Coxy, but there is still a difference. I think what maybe those front runners are doing that were previously doing it with a stop are probably running hard in the first stint of their softs, but then trying to run a single stint. So trying to get out early and then defend on really used tyres, which might work. I don't know. The tyre health is better than they were at about this point last race, but I'm not sure it's radically enough better for them to make it to the end with the sort of pace that they've been doing so far. I think they've maybe torqued their tyres a bit too hard early.
The problem is if you get within, I think it's about the last, definitely the last 5%, but it may even extend out to the final 8% of the tyre life. If you get under that, your lap times are automatically, first off, you're hanging on for dear life. It almost feels like you've got a puncture. At the same time, you're going to be 3 to 4 seconds a lap slower. So if Turmo is able to keep his tyres out of that zone, he only had, I think, 1 or 2 laps in the 57s in that last race. If he's able to do it this time around, I reckon the other guys, they'll be doing it for 2 or 3 laps longer, and he might find himself winning, I guess what you could call, it's not PC, but a bit of the cripple fight at the end, with everyone hobbling around on some garbage tyres.
Yeah, there's definitely a better way to phrase that, but you're not wrong. Yeah, it'll be he and Coxy will be the only two in the top 5 out there if they're all trying to run it on a single set.
They've got someone in. Someone has pitted. Licciardo has pitted, I believe. Yeah, he's in the pits. So
he has run longer on that first stint, but I'd argue he's maybe run a bit too long. This is lap 14, lap 15 at this point. He's only going to do another 6 laps on those softs. They're going to stay in their good window, but I'd argue maybe it's a bit too late.
He is in some clear air, at least a little bit, but he's got to get by Lachlan Locke, Nathan Higginson, Peter Thrower, Steve Warwick, Darren Kemp, and Coxy probably not going to pit. Got Braxton stand clear if he's in the pits. Anyone else going in? Turmo's still going. Noah Turra is still going. I think Turra pitted with only 2 or 3 laps to go last time around, but the gap between Turra and Turmo, it has come right down. Turmo low 56 on that last lap, and Turra a 57.0. So very interesting. A little bit of contact between the race car and Darren Kemp there. A little bit of lap traffic, I think. So just cut to a replay here. A little bit of lag.
A little bit of lag, yeah, and I think
he's left him space there. That's just Darren Kemp just out-braking himself, to be fair. And it's difficult for lap traffic to let the driver go by in that first sector, and Kemp's going to have to do it at the bowl. He's under pressure from Cheese, who's
I
a
can
lap
see the
down
lap
as
down
well.
anyway. No, sorry, that's what we're seeing actually is a battle. That battle with Cheese involved.
Cheese is almost ran off the
Cheese is
road.
actually racing Josh Watson for position. He is a lap down on Kempy, although he is shooting similar pace to Kempy. He has just pitted in his on fresh tyres.
Licciardo ahead of Lachlan Lock now, and eyes set on Higginson, who's parked his car in the middle of the road. Is he going into the pits? No, he's not. So Licciardo finds himself 22 seconds off the lead, so he's closer than what he was last time, where he found himself about 28 seconds off the lead, but it's still, he needs to be 5 seconds a lap faster, 54.8, than Turmo, who's now in the lead. He's got himself ahead of Noah Tara. Let's cut to a replay. Yeah, just a little bit of lag out there, so scrap that one. And Tara's gone off, and it looks like Tara's coming in, so he's overdriven his tyres. That's going to promote Coxy. So Coxy says, thank you very much. I'll take second place, and that's a tyre failure as he comes into the pits for Tara, and he's slowed it up enough. He's very, very lucky that he slowed it up enough, and he got also Ben Hall around at the final corner as well. So lives to fight another day, but that's going to cost him time, and he'll be well behind Licciardo at the end of the pit stop sequence. Kempy's kept on going out there, but he's actually got Steve Warwick not too far away as well here. So it's all lightening up here. So Licciardo doing his best to close the gap down, but too little too late, I think. It's 20 seconds in 3 laps. I don't think it's going to be doable, especially with all the cars that he's got to pass.
Yeah, he's going to make a 15-second gap, and he is putting in work on that. But it's, yeah, I think at this point, even with Turmo maybe backing off a little bit, he obviously has made passes up against above the lead, and he's starting to pull away at the front. So he's, I think, confident with where his tyres are at. Same probably not to the same degree, but Coxy I think is also pretty comfortable with where his tyres are at. He was one of the better of the top 5 on tyres when we checked earlier. The real question I think at this point for the podium spots is, has Kempy done enough? Because if he hasn't, Steve Warwick is there, and I'm not actually sure. I don't think Warwick's good at either. So it's a question between these two where they're at on their tyres.
A 57.2 to a 57.5. So Warwick, again, just a little bit quicker on that last lap. But the problem is they've got Licciardo coming in quite quickly, and he might catch. I reckon he might get Warwick by the end of the final lap. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how it all plays out. But Licciardo, a bit of work to do here. And catching the race car in an awkward spot there, but he's on fresh tyres. The race car is just struggling along out there. But Turmo currently leading 6 seconds ahead of Coxy, who's 6 seconds ahead of Kemp, who is 3.5 seconds ahead of Steve Warwick. But the question remains, has Kemp done enough to save his tyres? And it is the final lap, 57.4 for both those guys, while Dane Licciardo 55.3. He did have lap traffic. He's pushing hard. I reckon he may be able to steal 4th place, but 3rd place, barring a mistake from one of the front runners, out of reach, I'd say.
It's in a need either a tyre issue for Kempy. He's the one where we're not confident on where his tyres are at. But yeah, Dane's going to catch Steve. Whether Steve, Steve's only got essentially 1 corner past this. So there's a yellow flag actually coming into the bowl, so that makes him hold off.
But Turmo coming out of the final corner, he'll go 2 from 2. Strategy and pace, Magician. And here goes 2 from 2. Coxy will come home in 2nd with Kempy home in 3rd. What has happened to Steve Warwick? He's lost a couple positions out there.
I think Dane's safe in the end. There was contact between the two of them. Steve Warwick checking up here, Ben Holbroom, but in the end, from what I saw, Steve's got a little impatient on his tyres, lit the rears up and spun at the inside. He'll probably still feel slided towards Dane there. But Dane was getting a bit aggressive under a yellow flag, but that does put Dane in 4th at the end of it. Whether that's going to hold or not, I don't know. 5th then for Steve Warwick.
He did actually lose out to Peter Thrower, but Thrower threw it off the road at the final corner. Again, a little bit of lag, so I'm not exactly sure how it all played out there. And he ended up losing out to Lockie Lock. and finished home in 7th in the end, did Peter Thrower. So good race overall, 7 spots ahead of where he started, but just probably ruining those last couple hundred metres. Higo from the back of the grid, finishing in 8th spot. So good recovery drive from him, and he'll be hoping to put together another solid drive in race number 3. Braxton Stancliffe eventually coming home in 9th place. Freakish home in 10th. Taipan 11th. Noah Tara finishing 12th in the end after that tyre failure and pit stop. Hans having a bit of a mare out there. Late inclusion, home in 13th. Matt Cecil home in 14th, with Nether coming home in 15th. Not quite as good as race number 1 for him, but certainly good to see him back out there and giving it a red-hot crack. McLean home in 16th. John Slow home in 17th, so he had a few dramas that we've not picked up on there. And then Justin Cecil in 18th. Cheese, disaster run for him in race number 2. He'll be hoping to, well, not get any drive-throughs and keep it nice and clean in race number 3. Cracker home in 20th. Josh Watson home in 21st. Hashtag not last, ahead of Ben Hall, the final of the drivers out there, home in 22nd, with all drivers finishing.
Yeah, and nothing else. That's a good start. Yeah, all drivers finishing. So no one blowing engines, or we did see a couple of offs, but none so severe that they caused retirements. And yeah, some questionable bits at the back end of that race, but yeah, it was really interesting. And obviously that reverse top 10 worked the way they usually do, and there was a little bit of chaos at the start. Lockie Lock, I don't know whether he was just under pressure or he just natively fluffed his start, but it was a pretty bad fluff because he'd already lost, I think, 3 rows worth of cars by the time he got to turn 1, and they were still coming at him. And he would have felt like he would have felt like a gazelle in a herd of hippos. So yeah, hopefully he did actually recover in the end. I can't remember now. But I think he is still in the top 10, so he's another chance to try and have a decent start again this time around. And obviously Nether as well. So he is starting to get, as I said, a little rusty. He is starting to get back to his ways. He was starting a couple of truly trains there, and the only thing he couldn't anticipate was guys getting a little banzai and sending it down from places you really can't send it past. And I think Pete Throwers as an example. I don't think that was a deliberate pass. I think he just got a bit too excited and ended up on the grass and then really, really couldn't stop. So it was good that Nether saw him coming, because that would have been, as you mentioned, an airplane crash. But yeah, a little bit too much excitement in places for some of the drivers, and definitely hard for us because there was 2 or 3 battle packs and we couldn't watch them all at once. But it's pretty good racing on the whole.
Yeah, certainly some very intriguing racing, and the smarter drivers that do have a little bit of nous about them as well, finding themselves towards the front end of the field once again. And Turbo, well, he's schooling everybody at the moment. He's able to make his tyres last, driving at a lap time, and saving his tyres, and well, getting the job done. Everyone else out there that is doing that pit stop strategy, it's not really working for him, because Dane both times has been in the lead when he's pitted, and he's found himself well off the pace, and he's had to find 30 to 20 seconds in the space of 5 laps, which if the leader doesn't throw it off the road, you're never really going to find it. So a bit of head scratching, I think, for Dane in this one, but this round, if Turbo can do it again here, certainly going to bring him into championship contention, and would almost have to go down as one of the smartest guys I've actually seen in ASR the whole round, where he's just been able to drive at a number, not make a mistake, and especially in Super 2, where you do see a lot of the drivers, very, very aggressive. He's kept his head about him and, outbrained everybody.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like over the past 6 or 12 months, Tomo has come along in pace. We look back to last week, and he took home a championship by. It ended up being a countback in the TFAC Le Mans midgets. It was him and Will Devonish tied basically for the entire season. It came back to a countback of a wins, with Tomo having one more win than Will that sealed it for him. But no, Tomo's come on good pace. He's gone from being in his main game team, CRE, from being one of the sort of very stable drivers of the second car team, being some more of the development squad. He's now at the point where he's possibly looking at a promotion to the main game set alongside Will, depending on where the driver movements happen in the next little while. But he's coming with pace, but he has started to pick up some of the nous as well. And it was like, and we've seen it from before. He was in that top battle pack outside of Hans with I think it was Coxy and Berkey at Phillip Island. And yeah, it's seeming to be Tomo's strategy. It's working for him in that some of the drivers around him are so similar to the guys, not necessarily younger drivers, some of the sort of more the younger head drivers, I suppose, if that's the right way of putting it. Just going out there and setting heaters after heaters after heaters and trying to get a win that way, as opposed to Tomo, where he's happy to step back and think bigger picture and just sort of disassociate himself from what's happening around him immediately on track and just focus on his big picture. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see. It's interesting to see that development, and yeah, if we're having more races across the year that turn out like this, obviously we didn't quite book it at the start of the season, but maybe Tomo in a more of a bit more of a discreet way about it. He's making a bit of a claim for a championship here.
Yeah, the start of the season not ideal for him, so he's got a bit of time. Well, he's got a lot less time to claw back the points deficit that he has, but he's doing the best that he can at the moment, doing a really good job. But it's certainly something that I've been trying to harp on to plenty of drivers out there. You got to think more of the long game, yeah, as opposed to this car feels really good and I just want to go out there and drive it when it's fun. And then I hear people later on, the same people complaining, oh, I finished down in 8th or 9th position. Certainly something I try to preach to people. Just if you want to try and get the best results, sometimes you've got to drive the car differently and drive it a bit slower and think of the end game. It's not the funnest way to drive a race car or virtual race car, but you can get some unexpected results if you just play it a little bit smarter. And something I don't think there's some guys out there do have the head about them that they know they're not the fastest, but they can maximise their results by being smarter, and we're seeing that tonight. While there's other guys out there that maybe they got that little bit of swagger, they think they're too quick, or they think they're quick enough to go out there and blaze away, and then it doesn't work out for them. They just get a little bit too hot-headed about it, and or just don't think about it a little bit more. They're just like, no, I just want to go fast, and going fast doesn't always win your races. And there's a reason why Alain Prost has more world championships, for example, than Ayrton Senna. Ayrton Senna being very, very fast. Prost also was very fast, but not as fast as Senna, but was a smarter driver and ended up winning more. So something these guys, especially in the midfield, I think, I'd like to see, try and pick up a little bit more, is just be that smarter driver, and instead of being in the midfield, okay, in qualifying you might be stuck in the midfield a little bit further down, but come end of the race, you'll find yourself in the top 5. So hopefully you do see that going forward. But about a minute and a half away from the session ticking over, we will go and take a short break, but we shall be back for race 3 and the final race of the evening in a couple minutes time. Don't go anywhere. back to the Australasian Sim Racing Super 2 Championship from Barbagallo Raceway in Western Australia, or virtual Western Australia. As you can hear in the background, we have ticked over to the race session. Race 3, the final race of the night. We've had Turmo clean up so far, 2 from 2, with a superior strategy and really smart and clean driving, while his rivals around him have been fast, but they've been too fast for their tyres and a little bit slow with their strategy. But 40 seconds away here, drivers starting to form up on the grid, and going to be an interesting one. Will we see the likes of Licciardo, Kemp? I think, well, Kemp did do the no-stop strategy, but Braxton Stancliffe and a few others out there. Will we see a few others try the no-stop and try and make it work? Risk is, though, they might try that, but because they haven't raced or practiced like that at all in the lead-up, you might find that they don't know how fast they can push or how little or how much they have to look after the tyres. So it will be interesting to see.
Yeah, trying to adopt the strategy that Turmo's been using so far is going to be a hard one to do mid-race if you haven't practiced. Just looking at Higo, who hasn't started and has caused an accident.
So I'm not sure what's going on there, but clearly not paying attention. But anyway, ready when you run us through the grid here for race number 3.
Alrighty, starting off pole is Freakish in the drive.com.au Nissan Altima, with Braxton Stancliffe starting from second. His teammate, actually no, his teammate isn't there, it's Higo. Coming up through the order, Nathan Higginson in the GRM Wilson security car, with Peter Thrower in fourth. Lachlan Mock starting from fifth, hopefully gets a better start this time around, with Steve Warwick up in sixth. Dan Licciardo starting from seventh this time, with Darren Kemp in eighth. Daniel Cox back in 9th, with Femo just inside the top 10. Taipan starts from 11th, with Noah Tara starting from 12th. Matt Cecil out of 13th. Nether will be starting from 14th. McLean Lynette starting from 15th in the Preston Hire Team 18 Commodore, with John Slow, Mr. Ford, starting in his Holden out of 16th. Justin Cecil starting from 17th in the second of the DJR Team Penske Falcons, with Cheese in 18th. Cracker in 19th, with Josh Watson actually not last, running at the top 20. Ben Hall starting from 21st, not the ideal race for him. We saw him spinning nearly off in the pit lane at one point there, starting from 21st. And
Hans says he's gone to bed, so we're going to need people in the live chat. I'm not going to do it myself because I can't remember any lullaby songs, but those in the live chat, just sing some songs that will help soothe Hans after a poor night on the racetrack and an average day of work. He's with how his day of work went. But anyway, race 3 about to get underway. Drivers forming up on the grid, and someone is out of position towards the back end of the field. Looks like it was Cheese, I think. But, lights are on here. Who will get away and lead into turn 1? And well, it'll be Braxton, I think. Decent start. Licciardo's lit it up, and he's going to lose a couple positions there. So not an ideal start for him. He's got a bit of contact with Cecil as well. So he's gone off the road.
Involved there too.
And Lynette's gone around as well. Freakish though, sort of led into turn 1, but then lost out. So Braxton Stancliffe in the lead, and then we have Nathan Higginson, Peter Thrower. And then we have Freakish, Warwick, Kemp, Turbo, Locke, Cox, Tara, Taipan, Meloronian, Cheese, John Slow, Matt Cecil, Dane Licciardo, Justin Cecil, Ben Hall, Cracker, Watson, and McLean rounding out the field.
No, Tara off the inside there at the end of the bowl. I was watching Matt Cecil at that start. He got the headlights, or he doesn't have the headlights on, but psychologically he got headlights on for whatever reason. He obviously made contact with Dane, he made contact with Mr. Ford, Mr. Slow as well. So, I don't know what's going to be under Matt's bonnet, but he's got places to be, and they're not wherever he is at the moment.
There's on the inside another Elvian who's hung out to dry, stuck on the outside at the last corner and at turn 1. So he's back down to 14th after being up to 12th. But a bit of a train behind Lockheed Rock and a little bit further ahead. Also got Peter Thrower right behind. Well, in fact, the front group really haven't driven away here, which helped Licciardo. And with that poor start and dropping down the field, Licciardo might have to change strategy here.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what he'd go for, because he's going to need some pace at the moment to try. Just need some overall pace to try and catch up to this group. It'd be interesting to see what that means. Yeah, we're interesting to respond to that one. I'm not sure from where you would go from where he's gone to get at my pace. He's going to need to catch these guys. But yeah, we're just trying to watch this to see how Dane can adapt on the fly. That's it. He is already back to 10th. He is only 2 seconds behind the back of the train, which is Daniel Cox. So I don't think he's. If he can put a bit more work in this early stage and then pit a little sooner for his second set of softs, that's probably going to cancel out any losses from the first couple of laps of this race.
Well, we have seen him get to about lap 16, lap 17. So if he pitted maybe lap 6 or 7, his tyres should get to the end of the race on some kind of speed, but it'll also put him out in clear air and buy him more time. So that may be an option for him if he is going to elect to pit. So definitely pit a lot earlier and at least have clear air to make that time up, because he's not going to make it up if he's battling people later on in the race. He's not going to have time to make it up. So you see that's Taipan very wide in the background, and Coxy and Turmo battling out. Coxy now getting ahead of Turmo, I think staying ahead, that's for sure.
Yep.
And they're behind Kempy, who did do the no-stop strategy in race number 2 there. And they're all stuck behind Freakish, who's somehow got himself up into 2nd place. So Higginson's made a mistake somewhere, and he did see in the last lap Freakish make a move on Peter Thrower, and now he's moving himself forward once again, and going to try and close down on Braxton Stancliffe here.
Yeah, quite defensive now, because you see Higo's still close enough. Higo was one that ran it a little wide here this turn on the last lap, which gave Freakish room down the inside to get a decent run and then hold him off through turn 1. I don't think Higo's quite convinced yet that Freakish has better pace than him, at least across a lap, but across this stage of the race. So Higo's not giving up quite yet, and these two battling is both giving Braxton Stancliffe a bit of a runaway at the front, and is turning into a bit of a truly train, as we were talking about earlier. There's a bit of a gap back, but then it's Steve Warwick, Peter Thrower, Turmo, Darren Kemp, Coxy, Dane Licciardo, and Cheese. So it's 2nd back to 10th, all within about 3 seconds of each other, all in one train.
And Coxy's made a bit of a mistake. It was behind Turbo. Turbo's now got ahead of not only Cox but also Kemp. And Licciardo looking to make a move on Coxy as well, a little bit further ahead. Turbo making a move on Peter Thrower. He's another one that's dropped a couple of spots in the last couple of laps, since we've got Higginson and Freakish side by side down the pit straight, and we're side by side in the final corner. Freakish again having to go defensive. He's going to hold on around the outside at turn 1. They're going to go side by side for the first sector here, but it's advantage Higginson.
But I think there was contact between Licciardo and Cox. They both dropped to the back of that train, and I heard contact at turn 1.
Let's cut to a replay. Yeah, there's a bit of contact there, and he's going to slow down and redress that. It's not ideal for Coxy, and then he's just overtaking pretty quick. Just play that as well while we're here. So it looks like someone is off. It's Higginson and the Nissan. What has happened here? It's all starting to... Oh, big dive. Oh, he's lost it. That is a... So that's a silly move, I have to say. Sometimes you just got to know when the gig is up. And he's not done that there, and Higginson will be spitting chips about that one.
Very much so.
In a good position, and it's been all thrown away, and he's down the back of the field. Freakish is DNF'd. That's out of all that though, Stancliffe in the lead, 3.6 seconds ahead of Turmo. And I reckon he's just taking it easy at the moment, Turmo, because he's not really gapping Steve Warwick. That said, he was behind Steve Warwick a couple laps ago, but he has got it ahead of him. Steve Warwick doing a great job here in the second race and doing an even better job here in the third, but he's got a very, very angry pack behind him, and I reckon he's got to keep his head on a swivel here, Rudy, because these guys behind him look very, very impatient.
Yeah, what helped Tomo there was the whole train sort of breaking up when the contact with Tigo and Freakish happened. Everyone kind of, I think, had to back off and split, and Tomo was far enough back that he could go through there pretty much unabated without infringing on any yellow flag rules or anything like that. So that's what's helped him get a couple of spots up. And they were pre-positioned. You didn't have to expend time and trial wear to get those positions. He has now got to defend them, but yeah, the train is still very much a thing. Bit of a gap from Tomo, Steve Warwick, and then behind Steve Warwick it's now Darren Kemp and then Peter Thrower. Dan Licciardo still up in 6th with Cheese in 7th, and then a little further back, Coxy coming back through to 8th, with Matt Cecil now in 9th.
Cecil having a better run here of it in race number 3. So Licciardo looking to get a move done on Peter Thrower in turn 1. Kemp also showing the nose into turn 1 for Warwick. That's a late dive. Contact. Dane getting the job done on Thrower into turn 1. So Kemp now, I guess you could say, getting a little bit of a taste of his own medicine, being probably taking up the mantle of the toughest man to pass in ASR. Now Steve Warwick is giving him a tough time. And he's going to have to experience, I think, a little bit look forward, because he's got Dane Licciardo right behind him. And if he finds himself just out of position, he could find himself behind Peter Thrower as well. Again, sort of half defensive, half having a look for Kemp in the final corner. It's compromised his exit. Licciardo sets up the exit, and he's going to look to get a move done into turn 1. And Kemp's outbroke himself, and he's going to lose 2 positions, maybe 3. A little bit of a hip and shoulder on the exit. And Coxy right behind, as is Cheese. So Licciardo now right behind Steve Warwick. Only 4 seconds off the lead, 3 seconds away from Turbo. And I'd say he's probably used up his tyres.
Yeah, and this is the problem when the race starts to break up. I mean, your nice big long release train starts to break up into little battles, or it starts to create little battles. Is you have to pick between defending or attacking, because the car you're trying to pass is less than a second ahead. The car you're trying to defend from is less than a second behind, and you have to pick one of the two. And the problem is, Kempy didn't really. He was doing some of the best he could as an overtake without making things really dangerous. But in doing that, he left room. He was still leaving room for a car behind to have a go, and that's what happened. And he was put under probably a bit too much pressure there, and maybe a little flustered, and that's what dropped him back.
Warwick has done a great job of defending here, but he's ran wide at turn 1 and will eventually lose out. Sorry to cut you off there.
All good.
Good job pulling around the outside of the final corner and for most of turn 1, but just overcommitted a little bit. Licciardo now up into 3rd. There's Thrower in the background running wide. He's going to lose a couple spots out of that. Cecil will fire you. Earlier, he's had a good run here in race 3 and get a few more spots here if he's lucky. As you see Coxy up the inside of the wall. Cheese leaves him just enough space as he sees him coming. And Coxy now up into 6th as Darren Kemp looks to finally get a move on Steve Warwick. He's been on any side in this one so far. It's up alongside, but Steve Warwick has been doing a good job holding on around the outside. We've got a couple of cars at the final corner there, and what's happened there? Cecil says thank you very much.
Cheese made contact with, I think he just outbroke himself into the back of Coxy. He slowed down to redress. Pete Thrower was on the outside of Cheese, and they just had to wait for the two of them. He was more or less boxed in as they were slowing down to rejoin the track and redress.
Kept reviewing there was contact, but either way, very, very awkward. Matt Cecil gets 3 positions for the price of none there. He'll be very happy with that one. And Steve Warwick now hold on to the back of Darren Kemp. Got Turmo has just taken the lead of the race. So we'll cut to a replay here coming into the bowl. Turmo with the better run up the inside. Brixton giving him the space. And Turmo get in that position quite easily. Stancliffe here looked at, I think he's just dropped off the pace a little bit here, Rody. He can't quite save tyres as well as what Turmo's been able to. Turmo, we've seen in both the races so far, very, very consistent all throughout the race. So far, Stancliffe, his pace is, particularly the last few laps, has just dropped off a cliff a little bit.
Yeah, speaking of the size, I'm just going to have a quick look and see where our top five are sitting on tyre wear. They all look to maybe be going for surprisingly unsurprisingly, they're all looking a lot better than what we've seen previously, even from those guys we thought were going to try and one-stop it. I think everyone out here is everyone in the top group is trying to no-stop this race.
Licciardo has been travelling a lot slower because he's been stuck in traffic, so that's something to think about as well. So you're not travelling as quickly, not putting as much force into the tyres. It's doing a good job pulling off Coxy here. He's coming under Brett from Cheese at the moment. Cheese up the inside of turn 1. Coxy going to try and hold on around the outside. And still very, very close to a bit of an overlap. Coxy having to go over the curb there. Cheese getting done though. And that gives Matt Cecil a big look around it. That's exactly top 5 going for that no-stop strategy though. Could make things interesting at the end, Rudy, where we get guys that haven't done that in the first 2 races. They don't know what the tyres feel like at the back end of a stint, and it could be interesting to see them sliding around just a little bit more than those guys that have done it before.
Yeah, they won't know what the tyres feel like, and they probably won't know at what point, without sort of, I suppose, locking into it or having some intuition, they won't know at what point they can stop conserving and start racing. Because there was a point there for Turmo, which we saw at the back end of both the races. First one, a little less noticeably, actually to back off. In the second race, he was able to conserve a little more early. So towards the back end, he actually started to pull gap on the cars behind him. And that's the stuff that Turmo's now got programmed in his head. At what point, how much the race he needs to save and how much of it he can just race. And it's something that the cars behind, Coxy, I suppose, and Kevin being maybe the only other guys that do know, but Braxton and Dane not having had experience with, they don't know at what point they can push. That said, they are about to start racing each other, which is going to increase their tyre wear.
Yeah, poor run through the bowl for Stancliffe, and you can really fight it too hard there. As Dane moves up into second place now. So Dane travelling along nicely. Oh, Cecil's wide in the background there. Flashing the lights, I'm so pleased. Just cut to a bit of replay here. Let's see what happened. And don't tell me he's been nudged off. There may have been a little bit of contact there. Just double check. Flag. Instant contact. There's been a little bit of a rise in tyres. Sideways, so not too much either driver can do there, but certainly frustrating for Cecil as he looks to get straight back by either thrower. And he gets the job done just. And the bit out of the actually cheese, and he can set his sights once again on Steve Warwick. He's having a pretty good round here.
Yes, Steve Warwick, yeah. Sorry, Steve Warwick, Coxy, I was mentally blank. No, look, they're both doing alright. Obviously, Coxy had to recover from the pit lane in the first race and was the quickest driver of those pit lane starters. He'd already opened like a 5-6 gap in the rest of the cars in that bunch in the first few laps. Steve Warwick as well, he's been sort of quietly achieving as well this round. But he's sitting here up here in the top 5 at the moment, managing those tyres, and he's been a fair race to those around him. He's not been completely elbows up around some of the cars, but at the same time, you know, he's not just letting everyone pass him. He is making those around him work for it if they want to pass him. But yeah, I think these guys, as most of the top 10 is, aside of those I mentioned, Termo and Coxy and Kemp, you just probably know where they're at. They're just playing a waiting game on who's going to blink first and start trying to set quick laps again.
Dane has closed the gap up between himself and Termo, but again, I don't think Termo laps to go. Half a second a lap, but Dane will find himself on the back of the turn. At the same time, tyres, it is difficult to stop the cars, particularly if you have a front tyre that is extremely worn out. If it does get within that under that 5-6% range, you can try and make a big breaking move, Brody, and lock the tyres once that goes in. It's just going to be that's going to be interesting, I think, to see if Dane does catch Joe.
Yeah, here's the thing, if you're looking behind Dane, we've got lap trucker Noah Tara. He, I'm guessing, is pitted for... Yeah, he has. Okay, that answers it. He's pitted for soft racing. He's just set the fastest lap of the race, 55.1. So he's on fresh tyres. And I've been in Noah Tara's position before in the Summer Series race at the Coxy, being out there on what was used softs compared to used harbs. I was a lap down, but I was the same pace as the leaders, and he's in a funny position as well. He's probably not going to get out on anyone. I think the next car for Noah ahead is Josh Watson. Actually, no, Josh Watson's just there. So he actually will be doing his best to try and keep with Dane on pace and maybe run past Dane, because he's got a very real fight with Josh Watson just ahead.
Watson's got to keep his wits about him here, because with that Noah Tara, who has clearly pitted, he'll try and find a way past him when, Tara will try to follow Licciardo through if Watson leaves the door open, which he may do here. And Tara's just forced his way through at turn 1 and got the job done. Out of all that, Turmo has lost a little bit of time in the grand scheme of things. Also had Kempy lose, well, not lose, he's actually got himself up into third place ahead of Braxton Stancliffe, who's just starting to fall away here. Coxy and Cheese starting to duke it out as well. About a half a second between those guys, and Steve Warwick's not too far away either. So he's lost out to those guys, but he's there just in case they make a mistake. And, at the moment though, it would be a little bit unnerving for Dane to have this guy on fresh tyres going much faster than him. May even be smarter just to let him go, and maybe even put the leader, Turmo, under pressure for that final lap and see if he could force a mistake that way.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong that Noah's doing. If he's seeing it, and especially if he's got the pace over Dane to actually pass him and clear out. If he can do that, if he can do it convincingly, then he's good to go. But there's nothing against a lap car being quicker than the car in front and just sitting on his back bumper. And yeah, the best idea for Dane, which I think he's maybe now doing, is letting him through, because that can get to you, even though he's not racing him for position. Yeah, Noah being there could get to his head, so it's probably a bit late now to be doing it. But yeah, if Noah had the pace earlier, to let him through and get in the back of Turmo and try and maybe force Turmo into a mistake, because again, while you're not racing the car for position, it's a car, your natural instinct is going to try and defend from it and keep an eye on it, and that's going to possibly lead to a mistake. But again, I think for Dane, third time in this race, I think maybe it's a little bit too late on some strategy calls, because here comes Turmo to win.
Turmo, 3 from 3 is perfect. The strategy man, the magic man, he has delivered tonight. Turmo, majestic drive in all 3 races, had the pace, had the strategy, had the consistency. 3 from 3. Licciardo would come home in 2nd place, and Kempy a solid 3rd as well. Coxy home in 4th ahead of Cheese. They had a battle all race long. Apologise we didn't catch it the back end of this one, but gap was quite close at the front. Steve Warwick home in 7th behind Braxton Stancliffe. It'd be a little bit disappointed he couldn't quite steal the top 5, but still a very, very good races 2 and 3 from Steve. A great job from him. Matt Cecil home in 8th in one of his best races of the season. A little bit of ways off Steve Warwick, but 7th away from Steve Warwick, but in the mid part of that race he was a fair way off him, and looking for a little bit more consistency throughout the race night going forward. Peter Thrall home in 9th, bit up and down in that one. So good pace again, but just can't quite put a race weekend together. Lachlan Lock home again in the top 10 in 10th. Nether home in 11th place. So picking up some solid points there. Ben Hall home in 12th. Taipan home in 13th with John Slow 14th. McLean home in 15th. Higginson home in 16th after running in a promising position before being escorted off the circuit at the final corner. Noah Tarahome in 17th, which obviously he did pit, but we don't know the full story of his race there. Josh Watson home in 18th, followed by Cracker in 19th, with Freakish and Justin Cecil both non-finishers in race number 3. Alrighty, 3 races. Turmo has cleaned up all of them, but behind that, we have seen 3 very interesting races with some good racing up and down the field.
Yeah, actually, I'm just looking through the results. Case in point on Turmo as well. Not only has he won all 3 races, he also achieved pole. So I think all he needed is the fastest lap somewhere in there, and he would have achieved everything he could have in this weekend. So that's really going to help his points his point swing. But yeah, behind him, as I said, nothing was really locked in. There were guys that couldn't quite get to Turmo in that race. But yeah, just looking at just looking at the results. Yeah, a couple of the guys that managed to jump in there, and yeah, no, it was good racing, and we saw the viableness of each of the strategies come up in certain points of the race. And yeah, it looked like at the early stages of the first and second race that the guys running a soft and a stop might have a chance, and then they'd start to fall back towards the end of the race, and the guys running one single stint on their tyres would start to pull out. But no, some really good racing, and some really intellectual racing as well on thinking about that long game. And it's something that I hope some of the guys do look back at and look at the way that Tomo went about winning this race and incorporate some of that into their own driving.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, there was some really smart driving out there from some drivers. There's also some silly driving. But I did see some guys just being able to just look in their mirrors a little bit, see drivers when the car behind is having a move or really making that late dive, and just being able to have the wits about them to open the steering and just leave that little bit of extra space, even though the car behind it may have just outbroke themselves just a little bit. And thankfully that allowed us to, not really see too many plane crashes when did think we were going to see 1 or 2 tonight, if I'm being honest, beforehand. But for the most part, yeah, pretty clean, some good racing, and in the end, Turmo clear winner, but still very, very good racing nonetheless. All right, now we're just having a look at, not really having a look, but just waiting for the drivers, particularly Turmo, to jump into the broadcast booth. Haven't got the complete point set updated in front of me, but Darren Kemp does lead the way on 1,074 points. Daniel Cox has lost out a little bit tonight. Not by much, but he still lost touch just a little bit on 1,038. Turmo, though, clearly the big winner, 1,029 points. And he's starting to bring himself into contention. Licciardo on 987, followed by followed by Peter Thrower on 883. Cheese is on 875. And then we have Braxton Stancliffe, 827 and 903. So he's actually moved up. So we are having the points updated at the moment. So I'll actually stop announcing those point standings. But alrighty, if these guys don't hurry up and come in for the interviews, you might just cut it short.
Yeah, it's a shame because I'd really like
to. Here we go.
Oh, here we go. Alrighty, we're starting to get some people. I was about to say because it would be a good chance to Tomo. He is notoriously brief with his interviews. So we're going to see how much information we could extract from him in an interview today. And I might start as Dutch Fielder, and I might start with Tomo. So Tomo, that was pretty close to, I think, a perfect weekend. I think the only thing you were looking for there was a fastest lap somewhere in there, but you got pole, and then you managed to manage your tyres across all 3 races. Was it something that you put in practice beforehand to know that you could run the strategy you did, or did you just kind of just roll the dice in the first race and went from there?
I just rolled the dice and it pulled off.
Awesome. So obviously having had it work out in the first race and not quite necessarily having the outright pace on some of the guys, like like Dane, who were pushing on the softs and then pitting. Obviously, you backed yourself again for the second and third race. Was there any point there where you thought maybe the one-stop guys might have had something on you, or were you pretty confident after that first race that you had it locked down?
I wasn't really confident enough in the tyres, but I was just gonna risk it, and it paid off.
All right, well, that's more than we usually get from you, so that's progress. Bugger. So, yeah, I think you come out of that with, I can't remember what you're seeing the points coming into this round, but I think you come out of that something like third. So that's a strong case, and combined with your pace and your performance at Phillip Island, I reckon you're starting to emerge as maybe a bit of a championship favourite. Obviously, you picked up a championship last week at the end of the T-State Midget. So you know, maybe having some hopes to maybe pick up another one at the end of Super 2 this year?
I'll see how it goes.
Alrighty. Thank you for having a chat to us, Termo.
Thank you.
Lewis, I'll hand this off to you for somebody else for a moment.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find really who would be an interesting driver, because really we've seen, obviously we did see Dane. We might as well cut to Dane. So Dane, you did have some really good pace this evening, but the strategy in the first two races, well, it clearly wasn't the right one, and you couldn't make the one-stop strategy work, and you didn't quite have that extra bit of pace that you needed to close down Termo in the end.
As soon as I got past Warwick in the third race, not Warwick, as soon as I got into second in the third race, I kind of just went, you know what? I'm not going to catch Termo. I'm going to try and preserve the tyre. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but just talk us through. Obviously, you're thinking coming into the night, obviously clearly not confident that your tyres could last. How were the tyres at the back end of your stints in the first two races? Because you were able to go quite a way into the race and still have some kind of decent speed. But yeah, you're just a couple laps short and you elected to pit. What were the tyres like those final couple laps there before you did decide to pit?
I was only really losing between 5 to 6 tenths a lap, but my tyres weren't going to last. I think I was too. I'm almost certain, or I am certain, I was too aggressive on the steering lock in those first two races.
Fair enough. Well, either way, you still picked up a fair amount of points this evening with a pair of second places and a fourth. Under 100 points away from Darren Kemp, coming up to obviously Hidden Valley and Calder Park. How do you feel you'll go around obviously Hidden Valley first up and then Calder Park later on?
Hidden Valley's always been a track I've had decent results at, and I'm a track I'm very confident with. Calder Park, I've never done a race at Calder Park. I've done a lot of practice laps at Calder Park. But yeah, as I don't know how to put it. See how when the night comes.
All right, no worries. Well, still solid night from you. Probably not as good as what you'd hoped for, but still
Playing 2 podiums.
Yeah, you can't complain over a couple podiums, and you've also gained a fair amount of points on the championship leader Darren Kemp as well. So well done, and good luck going forward.
Thank you very much.
Over to you, Rody.
Alrighty, we might swing by then and have a chat to. Let me actually see who I've got in the list. There we go. No, I was just thinking about some of the other stuff that's happening. Have a chat to Kempy, current points leader as of the moment, but your lead has come down. Look, a good race weekend for you there, Kempy. Pair of thirds. Where were you thinking of the first race? Did you come into that? Do you come into thinking you're going to get your softs to last entire race, or were you banking?
No, I did practice runs and they never made it anywhere. So, I was sort of stuffed up tonight by qualifying. I managed to do one lap, and then the internet stuffed up on me. So, again, did the AMS thing. So I only got that one lap, but it was still a decent lap, so it wasn't too bad. But I just want to thank my sponsors, Castrol and Nissan Motorsport, for giving me a good car. But it's very consistent in the races. But yeah, the two that I got the thirds in, I actually never pitted. So I just I wasn't aggressive on the tyres. I was just sort of following someone, letting the faster guys through and just sitting behind them, and then get them at the end. So it sort of worked out well in the end. But I couldn't believe I did it actually. Very
And,
surprised.
and in the second, I suppose the third race, partially formed by the reverse top 10, we saw a lot of trains happening at the top end of the field. Was that just an extra element to survive psychologically, where like obviously in a train you had to defend, but obviously then attack at the same time? Did that get you, or you managed to manage all that?
I find I can only tackle or defend. I can't do both. But it was just a matter of being patient. You knew that they were going to, stuff up eventually. You just had to be there to get the opportunity. And actually, that's what happened. So it worked out well for me.
Awesome. Yeah, so still in the championship, although it was a little closer than it was coming into the round. But you are making an argument for consistency. How do you think you're going to go coming the next round at Hidden Valley?
Yeah, I've done reasonably well at Hidden Valley. So I think I'll do okay there. Calder Park's a bit of a mystery, but that's still a fair way away. So we'll just see how we go.
Yeah,
consistent, and I just keep there. Give the boys a run for their money. It's all good. It's good racing.
It is, yeah. No, you got just over, I think it's about a month and a half until we're at Calder Park, so you've got time to get in and get some practice down. But no, good racing tonight, Camping. Good to see you up there.
Thanks, and thanks the broadcast team and everyone for all the effort they put in, and everyone for racing tonight. I had a really good run, so thank everyone. It's good. Cheers.
Awesome. Alrighty, we'll have a chat to Coxy next. Coxy, fill me in. Did you end up stopping in that first race, or?
God, no.
No. All right. So were you pretty confident coming into this that you could make it on the? Actually, no, sorry, no, you didn't. So I do recall. Now that's coming to me. No, I give you credit actually for that first race, because we looked at the guys who starting from the pits, you being the lead car out, or the lead car once you guys got on track, and thought no, you guys aren't going to factor in until sort of the second or third race. But you did end up finishing sixth in that first race. There was a pretty good drive up the field on that one set of tyres. Were you confident that you were going to be able to run the soft for one stint, or were you just gambling because you were starting from the pits and you had nothing to lose?
First race, I was confident because, starting from the pits, you save basically 10%, which is, well, not 10%, maybe 1%, which sounds minimum, but near the end of the race, every percent counts. But no, I just thought I know I could make it on softs, but it's basically, I thought the plan was to just go flat out for about 8 laps and then just manage the tires the best I can. And then people just started appearing in front of me. And at the end of the race, I went, oh, is this guy position or is he lapping? Oh, no, he's position. Oh. So everyone I think everyone sort of realized probably, I don't know how many people lost their tires in the first race, but no, first race, I was quite proud of that. I think I gained 12 spots, I think. Let's have a look. I can open up.
I remember it was something like that. It was something like 12 or 14 spots. You did come a long way up the field from starting from pit lane. And that really what set up United as a whole. You got second in that second race just behind Termo.
Yeah, no, well, Termo was flying. I was because I thought I did cook my tires a little bit that race, to the point where I don't think I had anything left in the last lap, and unfortunately, Cheese was coming up on me, and I'm because I think he was a lap down and pitted, and I'm going, I'm not going to be able to stay in front of you, so I'm trying to let him know to pass me and all that stuff, and I think it was race 3. I had a good race with Braxton, but I didn't realize he was trying to pit, so I do apologize. I think he was trying to signal to me that he's trying to pit. I think he was trying to pit for 3 laps, because we were doing the whole sort of snakies down the main straight, and I was sitting behind him sort of as he was, because I think it was like we were doing everything you normally do in a race, but with the sort of the wide entry lane. So lucky we didn't have a crash, but sorry if I held him back to trying to pit, because I think he was just trying to avoid an accident. But I don't think I've got any other sneaky penalties. This might be the first round where I don't have any sneaky penalties. I think I hit everything right. I don't think I rammed anything off. I did hit Dane at the beginning of the pit, because we took off and I was literally just checking, changing my HUD, and next thing you know, there's a big mate thing right in front of me. So sorry about that, but I think someone stalled at the start and that just happened. But I think he kicked the button that race, so I don't think that really mattered. So anyway, I'll keep talking and I'll let you interview someone else now. Hey.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, obviously, then you got lost the points quickly, but you did still finish well. You finished fourth in that third race. Pretty good haul in the end, considering you started from pits, and you got to be happy with that.
Yeah, I'm just hoping there's not a secret penalty looming like always. I think I did all right.
Yeah, I think you did pretty well. As I said, starting from pit lane, we sort of ruled you out. So to come up and finish in the top 10 in that first race, and then just build on that progress through the rest of the evening, you've done a pretty good job, mate.
Thank you very much.
Alrighty, I think the only other person we've got in here is Cheese. Bit of a topsy-turvy night for you, Cheese. Obviously you podium in the first race and a top 5 in the third, but what happened in that second race?
That was chaos, man. I'm still familiarizing myself with my new wheel, and I sort of came off the track, set myself down, and thought, all right, this is my time. I'm going to go for a pit before everyone else, and it'll be sweet as. And then I accidentally undid my pit lane speed limiter instead of another button that I was meant to press halfway down the pit lane. So just got myself a penalty there, and then had to try and race it back.
Oh yeah, no, that makes sense, and that's no fun doing that. But well, we just got the second race. Obviously you started off well with qualifying. You started second and backed that up with third in the first race. You were amongst the guys in the top. You were pushing pretty early on running the no stop strategy. Was that a confidence based thing from practice, or were you just?
Well, no, actually. Oh, sorry, mate. The first race, I had actually heard and seen multiple people do no stops, but I couldn't get it past 19 laps, I think. So the first race, I ended up actually pitting in lap 12 or 13 to try and undercut a few people, and see how that went. And that didn't work out so well. It worked out fine. I mean, I got a podium, but I ended up sort of stuck in traffic and having to overtake people here and there. And it was the third race where I actually went for the no stop and in making it work.
Yeah, I think we kind of lucked out there in that. I think all the top 10 at that point were trying the no stop, and it was the gamble of who was going to basically start pushing the earliest. But no, it's for adapting a mid race to strategy. You did a good job to still pick up a fifth in the third race, and the obviously second race didn't help you too good, but you're still sitting fairly well in the points. I think you're sitting in fifth, just ahead of Braxton and a little behind Dane. So obviously, if we discount the second race, it wasn't a bad night. Obviously, could have been better if the second race had gone a little better. But are you happy with how you went overall?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy. This is a little bit unfamiliar territory for me. I'm normally sort of in the mid pack, so I'm happy to be contending up the front. And I definitely think that you can probably see that I sort of fit in up there a bit. Again, like the second race was really just a bit of error on my part. If I didn't do that pit lane drive through, I probably could have still got a half decent place. But I ended up racing myself from 19th to 5th in that third race. So yeah, I'm feeling quite confident in my driving, and I'm doing decent amounts of practice, so it's definitely showing.
Yeah, and just quickly talking about your driving, obviously, you and your mate Freakish have been running wildcard entries in supercars, but this round sees you guys move to a full-time status with the Kiwi Sim Sports underdeveloped team. Based on how you've done tonight, do you think that lends you well towards racing in a week's time?
Oh, definitely. I've put in a bit of practice this week, and this is also more practice, so I'm gonna put even more practice in next week, and then I'm hopefully going to be able to pull out something decent in the main game as well. I'm really enjoying that racing. Obviously, there's some super ridiculously fast guys up there, but I think I can put in a pretty respectable effort for that race.
Awesome! I can't wait to see the Gouda Racing Nissan out on track.
I bet it looks great.
It does. Thanks for jumping in tonight, Cheese, and good luck for next weekend.
Yeah, thank you very much, mate. Thank you guys for putting this on. This is amazing fun, so I'm loving it.
Awesome. I think we're done, Lewis. Can I hand this back to you?
All right. Well, that's just about it. Once again, we'll just go over the upcoming schedule for the remainder of the season before we end the broadcast. So, of course, today is the 4th of June. We've just had the Barbagallo round. A couple of weeks' time, we will be heading off up north to Hidden Valley Raceway, and then a little bit after that, the boys will be heading to a renovated Calder Park Raceway, which again, I reckon that's going to provide some very, very close and interesting racing, and with a long run to turn one, probably going to see the odd plane crash or two into turn one. Hopefully we avoid it, but it is Calder Park, and that generally does happen. Sydney Motorsport Park coming up as well. That'll be a very, very interesting race, that one. Very tough and technical circuit, and then of course heading to the streets of Adelaide, where hopefully there's no more camera issues for people and we're able to get through. Obviously, it was meant to be round 1, but it will be round 8 there in deep into August. And then Pukekohe Park Raceway, the penultimate round, and a bit of an improved Reed Park Street Circuit, aka Townsville, will round out the season. Anyway, from myself, Lewis Wedding, and from Benjamin Rhodes and all the admin team at Australasian Sim Racing, we hope you've enjoyed tonight's broadcast and tonight's racing of the Super 2 Championship. Catch us in a few weeks' time for the next round at Hidden Valley, but of course next week on the Outworld broadcast channel, where the Supercars Championship will be heading to Barbagallo Raceway in what will be, I reckon, a very hotly contested couple of races. Anyway, see you on the next one.